This episode is brought to you by Arbitrary Golf. Hey coaches out there, what I'm about to share with you is for the 1% who are ready to finally take their business to the next level. If you're ready to grow and evolve as a business owner, keep listening. I'm a coach just like you. I want more time to invest in my players, build my skills, and spend it with my family. We also both struggle with the idea of taking time off and sacrificing revenue. Coaches like us need tools to save time, automate admin tasks, and deliver excellent player experiences every single time. What if I told you there is a platform that captures 37% net new revenue in the first 60 days? It only takes 5 minutes to set up, and a simple copy-paste puts the rest on autopilot. As a founder and CEO of your business, you would fire yourself for not taking advantage of this value. Download Arbitrary right now and start the journey to modernizing your business. Oh, and when you create your account, don't forget to add an asterisk, that little star thing on your keyboard, to your last name so they know the guru sent you. If you aren't convinced just yet, keep listening to learn more. Now let's get back to the show.
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
You know how to cut to the core of me, Baxter. You're so wise. You're like a miniature Buddha covered in hair.
I want to become a guru so girls will like me. Then I will like myself.
Now, before we do this, let's go over the ground rules. Rule number 1. No touching of the hair or face.
Of course.
And that's it! Now let's do this!
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Golf Guru Show. Happy New Year, as this is the last episode of 2023. We recorded this just a couple of days before the new year, but we'll probably find you just into 2024, which is okay. This is an episode that's a little different from the other ones, as the show gets hijacked by my business partner and sponsor of the show, Arbitrary Golf, Mr. Jason Bilotti. You can follow Jason or follow Arbitrary at Arbitrary_ on all of your social platforms. We're going to call this show the Arbitrary Show, as this one could go and did go sideways. Hint, hint. So Jason came down to Bluffton and spent the day with me, watching me coach a few of my members and some players. And then we went to his condo on Hilton Head Island, got a few bottles of red wine, and then got after it. Jason is an incredible business mind and is the inventor and owner of Arbitrary Golf app, which you all know, which is a digital coaching platform that he kind of goes into a little more detail. Definitely need to check that out. So Jason hosted the show because he wanted the listeners to get to know more about me and my journey and story. For those of you that don't go way back, 4 or 5 years into the show and don't know a lot about my story, we really do a deep dive. So he led the conversation, asked some very insightful questions that led to, I think, one of my most transparent and honest interviews, with me being on the other side of the mic to date for me. Maybe too honest at times with the wine truth serum, of course. So I hope that this gives you a better perspective about your host, about me, and what, sort of makes me tick. So please be easy. I appreciate that. The topics that we discuss is a reflection of what we did well in 2023, to what we could improve, to what is on our task list or goals or whatever you call your New Year's resolutions, whether you believe in that or not, for 2024, to working out, running, and my near-death experience during my marathon story that you don't want to miss. For those of you that couldn't go way back, probably haven't heard that one, so that'll be new to you. But we do get into some teaching and coaching stuff, as he asked me a lot of questions about programming and some of the things that I did during the lessons that he observed during the day, which I think could be helpful to you coaches out there. But, just hang in there for the end of it. I know it's a long conversation soaked in wine and some really, really cool stories, as there is a special announcement about the show that I'm very excited about at the end. Before we get to the combo, I want to personally thank you, the listener, for all the support of the show as I finish my 5th season, which is hard to believe. Started this in 2018. I am so grateful for the hundreds of text messages, DMs, and personal notes of encouragement that the information and the show and what we're putting out there has had a positive impact in your career and your life, which means so much to me. I'm so grateful also for the outstanding guests that have taken the time out of their busy schedules to come on the show. And over the years, it's been incredible. We've had some of the top coaches in the world, and excited to have some of them back on in the future. But also there's a lot of new ones that I want to get in the mix in 2024. Many of those people are good friends of mine, but so many also I've developed a relationship with because of the podcast. And so it's been really nice to be able to reach the entire world and really develop those relationships. So just when I think that, I want to stop doing this and it's just too much, you guys bring me back in and make me realize that we are making a difference. So I'm forever in your debt. One of my goals in 2024 is to put out more content, whether it's on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And we talk about that a little bit in our goals for next year, or the podcast, do many more episodes as we go forward. Got some new things in the works, but I just want to continue to learn, listen, and share it with others, and let's keep this train rolling. So without further delay, let's get to this first Arbitrary show with my good friend, Jason Bilotti. Jason Bilotti, welcome back to the show, man. Thanks for coming through.
Great to be here, Jay.
This is going to be awesome. Down in Hilton Head. Why don't you set the scene for him? Like, now you're sort of hijacking the pod here, right? It's like you're going to ask me some questions. We're going to kick back and talk about some various topics. No chance that we know what's going to happen, which is fantastic. But why don't you just set the scene?
Yeah. So we have 2 bottles of red, obviously, and did some prep earlier today, spent the day with you. We saw 5 of your players come through the dojo. We're going to cover a little bit of end of year 2023 wrap up, talk a little bit about 2024. I've got handfuls of questions that are hopefully vague enough that get the conversation going, but then I've also got some very specific topics that we're going to talk about, ranging all types of things. I hope we get to all the stuff I've got, because I'd like to get to all of it, but there's quite a bit. So
it's okay. You know that there's no time limit.
That's fair.
On the Golf Guru show. So before we get started and get, I don't want to hijack the hijack, but tell the listeners like who you are again. You've been on the pod before. You got to briefly introduce yourself, but you were on with somebody else because you are very important in this project, being a sponsor and one of my partners. But give them a little background of like what you do on a daily basis, and then give them some Astruzi info.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, to be your partner has been, we're, I think, like 3 months into it. It's been great. It's been a great partnership so far. But about like my background. So day to day, I am in IT services. So my 2 largest customers in the financial services sector, I help build projects based off of a customer stated problem or a customer goal that they're trying to achieve. And I help create the solution to those problems. So all their cloud or data related projects. And what I tend to say is like all of that daily grind and all the learning that occurs in doing a job like that over 10 or 11 years has been a perfect segue into being able to have the confidence and like foundational skills, because you're never truly ready to do something like this new. For me, it was a huge leap, but it led to foundational confidence and skills to be able to build a company, which is Astruzi. Ultimately, those skills are listening to customer problems, identifying true pain, understanding if there's a solution worth building, and measuring those types of things, which has been perfect for Astruzi. I love talking to customers. What I do every day is sales. I find that like my core innate skills and comfort is sales. And it's not like the used car salesman trying to push something on you don't want. It's like genuinely looking to listen and understand and seeking to see your perspective, which has been perfect for Astruzi. So Astruzi has started was a really very ugly no-code application that was on the web, and we put it in front of some coaches and like got some feedback, and then we built some iOS-related beta stuff that worked pretty well. And we've been in the Apple App Store monetized for probably 7 or 8 months now. And growth has been growth. I mean, like I have no expectations on it because I don't want to, like, expectations create stress and anxiety.
Frustration.
Where you don't need it.
Like golfers.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not that I'm not trying every day to grow the business. It's just that there is so much that I cannot control. But what I can control is the quality of what we're trying to build and the interactions I have with coaches daily as we try to better understand and make it useful and successful. So ultimately, Struzzi's goal, which I think it's delivering on today, is to be the business management platform for the true modern digital golf coach that has their own business, that runs a solopreneur is the word I use all the time, and be the backstop for those gentlemen and those women that run their own brands. And that's ultimately what a lot of these golf coaches are becoming nowadays, is their individual brands.
And what I appreciate about you is what we did today is you're visiting clients or trying to get to know some of the coaches out there and then talking to them, making relationships or building relationships with those coaches that are going to be your clients. And ultimately you get a better sort of landscape view of like what you can do to get better, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I say this all the time and I do not hide this at all. I am not a golf coach. And it's easy to think that is a detractor. I think it's a massive positive because I know my biggest weak spot and I'm actively working to address it. And I will never be a golf coach. So this is not one of those things where like I don't believe weaknesses become strengths. I believe weaknesses become known and they become filled to a point that they don't hold you back. So I'm actively addressing it by spending time in your world and like listening and taking notes, which is what we did today, and like had a lot of fun seeing you in your element and as you build relationships with your players. And I'm also actively adding people to our coaches advisory board that are coaches who are practitioners of the craft to help me make sure my blind spots have a flashlight on it when appropriate and it's being addressed when appropriate.
Perfect. I love it. So where do you want to start?
I'd like to start with a quote from Rick Rubin, the very well-known, highly successful music producer, Def Jam Records, what he's most well-known for.
Yeah, being a hip-hop guy, I know exactly who that is.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the quote is, any thought you have about outcome undermines the whole thing. Pretty broad. Yeah. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not just golf, but it's life. And I use the word intention a lot. So, and you heard me speak of that today in some of my lessons, is if you don't have a clear intention, then most likely you're in the outcome, like is what most of us as golfers, or even if we're dreaming of doing something or reaching a goal, we lose sight of what's the first step, right? What's the process, right? It's like your sports psychologist expert out there is going to say when you're in the outcome, you basically have missed the most important part, which is staying in the process. Now, with golf, that can be true to an extent, okay? So it was interesting. I had a conversation yesterday with one of my players, just one of my members, but super passionate. You know, I like, and you saw one of the ladies today brought her stats in, right? Well, he brought his scorecard in. The guy's a real stat-based guy, which I appreciate because we can really dig into the weaknesses. And he was talking about how the flow of the round went. And so I said, I would like you to start setting mini goals, right? So not thinking about, when you get off to a good start, whether it's, you're under par or you're having, depending on the skill level, how well you're playing. And then you start thinking of the outcome, which is like, what score am I going to shoot, right? So you've gone from number 4 to number 18, and then you kind of have to roll yourself back in, or you're going to get lost in the minutia of the outcome, right? So I told him to set mini goals, which is like set 3-hole goals. So every 3 holes, you need to be this. Like my good players always say, you need to be 1 under through 3, 2 under through 6, and so on. So there's some little speculation to that, but for the most part, when you hear a quote like that, it's definitely, don't get lost in just the outcome of like, okay, I want to shoot this number. It's like, I don't like that when my players, that's why like Monday qualifiers are so hard. Like you show up to the first tee and you think I got to shoot 64. I think that's a dangerous place to be a lot of times for players, right? Because now you lose sort of the process of what creates the 64. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's sort of a broad answer, but I mean, that's as far as golf goes. I think that's a thing. And it's like in life, if you're, setting a huge goal and you say, I want to be X, I want to make this much money, or I want to achieve this or win this or whatever, it's like you've got to reel yourself back in and go, hey, what are the little things that are going to create that? And then I think that's what ultimately leads to success.
So let's double click. Talk more about what we covered when we were getting dinner between swing thought and swing feel. This is pretty applicable to this topic.
I hadn't heard this, but it's just something that like my little monkey brain kind of goes to a lot of times when talking to players, regardless of the level. And it kind of goes back to like how I train my players. I like to get my players to, one, analytically understand what they're trying to do, right? And that's the verbal piece, and as I always tell them, like, you don't have to write a book about it, but have a general idea of like, what are we doing, right? What changes are we making? Try to get them to actually use the language of spit that back at to me to like, what are you doing? What are you trying to do? It doesn't have to sound exactly like me. It really just needs to sound like them. But I would call those swing thoughts, right? So I had a guy yesterday come in and we hadn't seen him for a while. And I was like, okay, well, run your plan through, back to me to just make sure that we're on the same page. And he knew exactly what he was trying to do. And I go, have you practiced? He goes, not really, but I've been thinking about it a lot. Okay. So I'm like, oh, that's great, but that's not going to make your body move differently, right? So you kind of go from swing thoughts to when I have my players basically exaggerate rehearsal swings, do things in a slow motion manner, whether you like that or not. I know some coaches do, some don't. I've had a lot of success doing that. I haven't found a better way to actually make a movement change is to get people to actually do it slow, because then they can sort of attach a feeling to that thought. So then when they go play, I always say you don't need to have a ton of thoughts when you play, but you need to either incorporate or rehearse a feel that you can play with that's associated with it. So it's kind of a link to a chain that I don't know that anybody's ever like explained it that way, but that's just kind of the way I think, and that's the way I explain it to my players.
I think this is the same ilk here. I've heard you talk to Will about feel in real. Mm-hmm. Is this the same concept?
Very similar, yeah. And feel in real would be when you're making a swing change or a pattern change is like how much you feel like you're doing it doesn't always mean you're doing it that much. Jim McClain used to say, you need to feel like you change it a mile to change it an inch. Okay, which was very fair. And the same with the feel and real. Butch Harmon talks about feel and real. And that's why, again, it's like depending on the player. Now, because I categorize players into sort of quick changers and slow changers. If you've got a slow changer, which there's pros and cons to both, then you need to get them to exaggerate the opposite of the error. More exaggerated, right? Mm-hmm. So like you need to make them do it a lot more crazy, right? So you see some of the tour players are making some funky looking moves. People don't understand. It's like, is he really trying to do that? No, he's just trying to move his barometer an inch or a couple inches in that direction, right? Now, quick changers, you may have to get them to rehearse a bit more proper or how you'd want the club to move or their body to move and so on. But yeah, feeling real, like I say, it's a long bridge, and the better players have an idea of how to make that bridge smaller because they have better self-awareness of like when they're overdoing it, when they're not.
Yeah, I love that. I've heard that Tommy Fleetwood, one of the things that makes him so amazing is his bodily awareness. Like you think about a pro is going to know the feel inside of a real swing pretty quick.
Yeah, you would think so. But even them, I mean, like I've worked with lots of tour players and pros, and they're no different. They're just a lot more talented than the 15 handicapper. But that's why we use measuring devices like TrackMan or, especially video. Like when we're moving and, somebody says, oh, I feel like the club was way behind me. Like today, like the young man I was working with today he said he felt like he was over the top.
Quite a few times.
Yeah, quite a few times. Yeah. And he was swinging 6 degrees to the right. Mm-hmm. So it was just like getting that to the awareness of like, okay, wow, now I know you got to get the answers. You got to get some accurate information. If he thought that, he, if he would have left 2 weeks later, he'd have been 8 to 10 out, mm-hmm. right? And then really struggling. So yeah, it's just getting that proper feedback. I think the feedback loop is super important.
Yeah, that's great. That's a phenomenal place to start. If I think about just kind of going back to that quote and kind of then we'll start to get into wrapping up some of the 2023 thoughts. The thing that kind of stuck out to me, I had a little known fact about me, especially to your audience, is I actually was a kicker. So I played for the University of Delaware. And my position coach at the time, and this is actually, I think, what I've come to learn is something that football coaches preach a lot, is control the controllables. Control what you can control. So if we think back to Rick Rubin's quote, like there are, as much as we believe that we are controlling a lot in our lives, there is far more that we cannot control in our
100%,
lives.
100%, yeah.
And ultimately, what we can control is like how we react and how we think and what we do as life presents itself to us. And ultimately, when you're building a business and when you're a solopreneur, you think you can control marketing. You think you can control administrative and communication because like you wear the hats as you take those roles very seriously. But ultimately, like you can't control a lot of it. You can control the inputs that you put into it. That's what I find is most important is like, what are the inputs that you're putting into your effort daily? What are the inputs you're doing to create habits daily? And ultimately, as you continually repeat those inputs, the outputs change over time. The speed of that change is very dependent upon how aggressive you are with your inputs. We were talking at dinner, when you were young, you were putting in 22,000 hours, 26,000 hours a year in coaching. You're going to get better. It's impossible not to.
Yeah, if you're paying attention. Like if you're not just completely shut down and like think you've got all the answers when you're 28 and then you think you can grow, then yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're doing the right things. Habits are made and like that's where people get better, which is a perfect segue into reflecting on 2023 and then talking about 2024. I'll start by saying I long ago threw out the idea that making goals was a worthwhile effort.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think that they are a good idea in theory, but they're just like trying to say, you know, I'm going to stop doing X or I'm going to like start doing Y. Like you're actually going to the output first. And instead, what I focus on, what are the habits that I want to change or what are the habits I want to double down on? So I care far more about like I reflect on the things I think I'm doing well, the things I enjoy doing, and the things that give me energy that don't require a lot of output of energy that I want to continue to do. And what are the things that I think I need to do better at that will make me a better person, a better husband, better friend. And ultimately, as I do those things repetitively over time, and a year is a long amount of time to work on a habit, positive things happen.
Yeah. Do you believe in resolutions? Then apparently that would probably be a no.
I do not.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, I think, and that's a good, I've kind of gone the other direction a little bit. My mentor, Dana Rader, really was the first one that sort of challenged me to do goals the right way. Because prior to that, even when I was on my own, I was a head pro and assistant pro coming up through the business. I always set goals. I always like wrote them down. I always, you know, everybody's probably heard the science behind, you know, writing things down, keeping them visible. I think there's something to that. And it actually, I mean, ended up coming to fruition for me is like everything when I was head pro led to teaching and being a top teacher, which when I was in that position was not getting me closer to my goal, which is why I made the change to go to the golf school. So when we got to the golf school, Dana was very big on like setting goals, and she helped me like clarify them, right? So, and this goes to your point, it's like it's not one thing just to write something down. It's also to put some action behind it. Like so we'd always put action items of like, how are you going to get there, right? What's the process of getting to that goal, right? And you can put timelines on them, which I think is important as well. I've gone sort of away from that a little bit. Now I do a lot of journaling, a decent amount of journaling. I need to do more to where I'll write some things down, more like task lists, I guess, like short-term task lists. But I mean, long-term would be beneficial. It's kind of what I did. It's interesting though. It's like I did a Tony Robbins like seminar years ago. Gosh, it was probably a good 15 years ago, probably. I've lost track of time. But I found my notes the other day and I was surprised at like how many goals I had reached. It's crazy, right? It was just things that were just like getting out of my head going, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to be. And so many of them have come true. But yeah, so continue, like, what do you do?
You're not off the hot seat yet.
Okay, all right.
So, do you remember some of the goals that you wrote down?
Yeah, it was a lot of stuff. Like I wanted to do like golf schools with like some of my legends. Like, so for instance, speaking at the workshop at Jim McClain's, like that was a huge goal for me. Like I wanted to do something with Jim McClain. I wanted to do something with Butch Harmon, and I've gotten to have him on the podcast twice. I mean, this is just amazing stuff that has kind of, I wouldn't say I'm not going to use the word, but come to fruition over time, right? It's just, but it wasn't because I just kept like bugging them. It's like I built my skills, honed my craft, you know, the little things. And we talked about at dinner. It's like, it was never about money for me. I always had that idea, especially when I sort of matured a little bit, when I got past the stage of like when I thought I knew it all and I knew nothing. And
We've all been there.
right. Yeah. It's just like, and then I thought, I just got to get better. I always tell like young assistants that work for me or the people that ask me for advice, I'm like, look, if you build your skills and you add value to yourself, somebody's going to pay you what you're worth eventually. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you keep your eyes open. Right. And that's kind of what's happened to me is like, I've never worried about it. And I've always made more money as I've gone along, which I've been very proud of, but it's never been about the money. That's the thing. So it's like reverse engineering the deal, but it's like, it just kind of happens. So that goes back to the process. It's like going, oh, I want to make $1 million. No, well, how are you? It's what, and Jim Rohn, we talked about, and, programs that I've done over the years is like, he always said, it's not about making the $1 million. It's what you become in the process of making the $1 million or whatever, or reaching that goal. And that's what's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the growth that occurs outside of comfort zones is also something that has been amazing to experience while building Estruzi and being able to do this day in and day out. And to your point about what you just said about like the process of creating value, I believe we've been conditioned to believe that we can create demand because you can pay for ads, you can put a bunch of stuff on Instagram, you can create these followings, and like you think that 21,000 Instagram followers is demand. But the truth is, we don't create demand, we create value. And value is subjective to you as an individual.
Yeah.
You've already highlighted that. To you, value wasn't the money you made. Value was what you did before all that. And like value is also subjective to the people that spend their hard-earned money to purchase things, services, and goods.
Which is my expertise, right? It's like for my businesses, like I put a high value on people traveling to see me, taking their hard-earned money and time to come see me when they can see anybody they want. I don't own it. My members don't have to come see me. My players don't have to come see me. So, that's an honor in itself. Like if you're grateful for that, then I think the rest of it takes care of itself.
I like it.
Yeah.
So if we reflect on 2023, I'll go first. What I think is what I'm most proud of this year, personally, I got married in October.
Yeah.
Phenomenal experience. I have said this multiple times, so me saying this in public is no surprise to my wife if she hears it. We had a great time. It's the best night of our lives. We'll never do it again. I never wish it on anyone.
I know what you mean. It's stressful, honestly.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
A level of stress I've never experienced before in my life. And I like to think I handle stress pretty well.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we did it. So that was great. I mean, there was a lot that went into that, obviously.
Yeah.
And we've just continued to grow as a family. We have a dog, and like we've continued to grow as people, and our relationship has evolved, and we're getting to know each other at a different level. So that is obviously something I'm very proud of. Estruzi, like I never put timelines on anything because it creates, again, expectations that I don't control. But what I am very proud of in Estruzi is we've built a platform that continues to be more stable every time we release something new. We built a platform that continues to focus on what are the highest value things that we can deliver to our coaches. And I've done it in a way that we've also changed the development team, which has been a huge success. From a long-term perspective, I've like extended our ability to like stay alive and be successful probably by about 5 years, just because we've gone to a more cost-effective solution to building service, building code, building deliverables, which has been great. And another thing that's just very recent is I've hired a virtual assistant.
Human?
First one. Yes.
Not AI?
We'll get to that one in a bit. And I've quickly realized that like I can't and I shouldn't be doing all the things that I think I need to be doing.
Smart.
And she has been, in only 3 weeks, has been a godsend. It's amazing the level of help she's brought. So I'm looking forward to like getting her more comfortable, extending what she can and is comfortable doing in 2024. And then ultimately, like I feel very fortunate that I get to play golf as often as I do. It's become, for me, I played a ton of sports. I'm extremely competitive. That's why I love sales. Yeah. And I feel fortunate that like I can look back on 2023 and said I've played some great courses that I traveled to, but that I feel very fortunate I get to play as often as I do weekly because it's my single highest level of competitive outlet. And I'm starting to get into like more matches that actually matter, not just weekend
Where do you
rounds.
play in Charleston?
So my favorite course easily is like Stono Ferry.
Okay.
So I play there every Tuesday. I got in with 2 members. They're great dudes. They got the 7 a.m. tee time, which is perfect because I can get there, get out before even noon and like don't miss a day, essentially.
Yeah.
And then Rivertown is a course that's really close to me that I really like. It's a Jack Nicklaus design, which has been a lot of fun. And I just like Jack Nicklaus, that course specifically, because like the visual tricks you on like what you're looking at, thinking that you probably shouldn't play it where you really should. So the approaches and all the tee shots are very unique, and it's always in great condition. So those are probably my two favorites right now, local, that very fortunate to say I can play pretty often. And it's been a great way to meet people. Golf is the ultimate social connection sport, especially at this age that we all are in. From those perspectives, 2023 has been great. If I look back and wish that there was something I probably could have done a little bit differently, I should have gotten back into weightlifting earlier. I realized that I was like another stress relief that I didn't have for myself.
We'll talk about that.
It's huge. Yeah. And now that I'm back into it, like I now appreciate it mentally far more than I do physically. And it took me, I think, like this, like hindsight's always 2020. I think it took me not doing it for a long time to truly actually appreciate its value.
Make sure I run that back with what I'm doing physically when we get to our goals. But
love it.
It's good. All right.
What about your refresh?
So I'll do. And I didn't write anything down for reflection. I got my goals in front of me, or just things I want to do that I want to focus on next year. But thinking back, it's my third season at Colleton, which has been fantastic. The members have been great. You know, I've been busy as I want to be. It's cool. Like I was telling you at dinner, you know, unexpectedly, you know, pick up a few tour players, you know, working with Will McGirt, working with Brian Campbell, you know, and Justin Doden, and these guys that are, you know, that have really, you know, challenged me to be a better coach. And I think we've done some really, really good work. I mean, you know, Will had a decent season, and I think I'm really excited for next year, you know, finally kind of getting healthy, and we don't need to go into all that. But overall, you know, definitely a successful year. Not that it's about awards, but I mean, winning the Straussball Award for the Carolina section it means a lot to me, right? I mean, I've won, you know, Teacher of the Year. I've won the Horton Smith Award. Which again goes back to that process of, you know, I was trying to be the best coach I could be, and these things sort of happen. The Horton Smith Award was more, you know, I did 7 years of the Guru Workshop, which I was very proud of, and really built a nice event for coaches to come in and learn. But the Straussball Award means a lot to me because it's about mentoring, and it's the things that I've given back to other coaches that I've really put a lot of attention on in the last 10 years, right? Or maybe even more. And through the podcast, I think it's allowed me to mentor a lot of people from afar, like the DMs and the phone calls and the messages that I get and questions that I get mean so much to me. And the fact that I can affect other coaches, young or old, in a positive way means a lot. So that was definitely the highlight, and that just happened a month ago or so. But overall, I mean, I feel like I continue to refine my craft. I mean, I'm getting better. I mean, obviously it's tough to measure, you know, a lot of times, you know, we talked about trying to get a little bit more balance coming from what I felt like was super busy at Carmel and Charlotte, and just, you know, for 20 years, just killing myself, trying to teach as much as I can. Moving to the low country, I think I've done a better job of kind of balancing my family, my kids and my wife, trying to be a better husband. You know, those types of things have been good. But again, going back to our conversation earlier, it's like I almost feel guilty sometimes, like when you're treating yourself to like some relaxation. Like I enjoy fishing, as everybody knows that follows me. I almost feel lazy, right? I'm like feeling like, when am I doing enough? So I'm always sort of reflecting, not just from the year, but I'm always reflecting back on, you know, the last 10, 15 years, and trying not to lose sight of what made me successful, right? So the little things that I did, and things evolve, right? It's like even social media has changed. Like we were talking about, I used to have a YouTube show. I used to have a blog. I don't do those things anymore. Now it's more Instagram, and I'm not even getting in front of the camera as much, which again, we're going to talk about in my goals for next year, and my intentions for next year. But it's been great. I haven't been happy with my physical self, and kind of going back to your weightlifting, and we'll kind of get into that. For people that don't know me very well, like if you know me from a long time ago, I was a big runner and was like 15 years, I was in fantastic shape. I did marathons, and I got stories behind those as well. So put on what we call the low country 10 as I've come down here, right? So maybe 15. So I'm going to change that. And I'm already changing that.
I was going to say, I saw in Miami.
Yes. So we're that's part of my next year's plan, but I've already kind of given it a jump start. So that's my reflection.
I like it.
So do you want to go to your goals first, or where do you want to go now?
I'm not a goal guy.
Yeah. Or whatever you want to call them, right? It's like, what would you like to do?
Yeah,
in 24.
My habits that I want to double down on. Let's go with that.
Yes.
So I'm a morning workout person. Twice a week's where I'm at now. Get to 3 times a week and consistently stay at that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not trying to bulk up. I'm not trying to like have to get a maximum or minimum number of calories in my day. Like that's just not where I'm at. It's about healthy body,
there you go.
Healthy mind.
Yeah.
So continuing the habit of working out, get to 3 days a week, continue to specifically break away time in my day to work on Estruzi throughout the day. The beautiful part about it, like what I do daily is that like, and I get to work from home, I can always work on Estruzi when I have free time.
Sure.
That's a blessing and a curse. So that means I'm always working if I'm not watching myself, which is why I physically spend time playing golf, because that is 4 hours of my week where I'm not working.
Yeah. Got to have that.
Have to.
A little bit. Yeah.
Have to. Because I was telling you earlier today, I told my wife at one point before the holiday break started, I was like, I like my coworkers and I know they're doing the right thing, but like everyone's bothering me.
You're getting grumpy.
I was very grumpy. Yes. Heading into the holiday season, which is the opposite of when you should be grumpy. I was like, well, yeah, you're burnt out is what she says to me. I was like, yeah, 100% right. So it's like the goal is obviously not to be burnt out. That happens. We're humans. We're not machines. But like being able to give myself enough space to be healthy for longer periods of time and like get into long periods of focus time, that's the hardest part. Like I want to be able to focus on specific tasks, whether that be Estruzi or other things, without distraction. Like that those are the habits I want to try to create for myself. So, and ultimately from just like a business perspective, what I would say is like the business is at a good place right now. It's just consistently doing the right things, building relationships with coaches. Like I know that they're going to make decisions on their own time. Like I need to consistently just know that like there's no pressing is not going to help them or me. So it's just continually building those relationships and like focusing on like my local relationships that I can impact more directly, because that'll start to create a really tight home base that as word spreads, just starts to kind of grow on its own.
Sure. I love it. All right. So let's take a short break, get some wine.
Absolutely.
And then I'll go through my ideas for next year.
Love it.
This episode of the Golf Guru Show is brought to you by our new partners, Estruzi. Listen up, coaches. What I'm about to share is different than what you've come to expect from the guru. Normally, I'm the one asking the perfect questions to tease out the secrets, tips, and lessons learned from the best and brightest in our industry has to offer. This time around, I want to share some perspective. You know you're a business owner, right? You're a solopreneur. You're the founder, CEO, admin, sales, and marketing department. Like you, I often daydream about a world where these no longer consume our valuable time and energy. All of this takes us away from high-value time in the lab developing our players. If some days you feel like Bill Murray from Groundhog Day and your business is slowly sending you into an early grave, well, thankfully, I can say from personal experience, relief is only 5 minutes away. And I know you have 5 minutes. Coaches, if you have a Gmail account, an iPhone or an iPad, have your own LLC, constantly switch between 4 to 5 different services to run your business, charge at least $70 per lesson, or deliver at least 15 hours of lessons per week, then pay close attention because I'm talking directly to you. Estruzi is a business management platform where you finally offload all those wasted hours in admin tasks and get back to doing what we love, coaching your players, nerding out on ball flight laws, and about a million other things you would prefer more. If your business would benefit from 37% net new revenue, Estruzi is for you. If you struggle to build accountability with your players and dream of staggering 71.4% swing analysis viewer rate, Estruzi is for you. If you want a platform that protects and amplifies the decades of experience instead of allowing players to window shop 5 different coaches only to choose the cheapest one or the cheapest option, Estruzi is for you. If you have no idea where to begin, Astruzi is for you. I personally have an account and can vouch for the value that Astruzi delivers. The download link is in the show notes, or head to astruzi.com to download the app. When you create your account, don't forget to add an asterisk to your last name so they know that the guru sent you. Go to astruzi.com today. So we're back. Got a little wine.
So before we get into your goals, we have some very important things to talk about.
Okay, yes.
So you're an amateur sommelier.
Yes. I would say I'm a decent wine guy to an extent.
It's a much more blue-collar description for your skill set. Wine guy.
For sure. Yeah.
You want to tell us a little more about that?
I just find wine fascinating. I mean, I think it's not like I've been to a bunch of wineries and like gone through it. I've watched a lot of documentaries. I mean, I'm a YouTube winery guy. I'm a YouTube sommelier, like a golfer. But I just find it fascinating. I enjoy it. Like, it's kind of like when we were younger, like we always hated wine, right? It's like, oh gosh, there's a lot of alcohol in it. But looking at some of the movies like Bottle Shock and like Sideways, right? Start getting into it. Drops of God. If you guys haven't seen Drops of God, pretty awesome. Yeah, really, really good. It's on Apple TV, I think.
Yep.
So that's another one. But just over the years, I've just drank more and more wine, which changes your palate. I always get the questions like, well, how do I get into wine? Like, you just start drinking it, right? But you start understanding more about it. There's a lot to it, but I enjoy it. My wife enjoys it. And so, I don't collect it per se. Drink it probably too fast to collect it, but I've got my favorites. And this one's not bad. This is a Daewoo Cab. And we got a French wine, an ode for Drops of God, being a French-Japanese TV show.
We can't forget we're drinking wine out of coffee cups.
Yeah, that's my question to you. Is like, this was specific. Like,
I was very specific.
This was not by accident. Like, tell me the story behind that.
Yeah, so out of most things with my life, I'm looking for the easiest way out of mundane rote tasks. And ultimately, I drink wine out of coffee cups because I hate cleaning with my hands.
That's it.
Wine glasses.
Oh my gosh. Dishwashers work fine, man.
My wife doesn't let me put them in the dishwasher.
Oh my God.
They get ruined, apparently.
Okay.
That's all I got for you. I'm sorry.
That's a little downer. I thought it was going to be a lot more to it. Like, that was me a college story or something. We just grew up drinking out of, we couldn't afford regular wine glasses or something.
It's blue collar, going back to.
No, it's fine. I don't care.
Plus, if you're drinking in the middle of the day or in the morning,
you don't know.
No one has a clue.
There you go. That's what I thought I was going to hear.
Well, there you go.
I like that.
All right. So we digress. We're back regularly scheduled programming.
Okay. So as far as resolutions, again, I don't believe in resolutions. Task list, I guess, would be sort of how I would describe it. So I've wrote down 7 things, and then we'll get to some of the other stuff here that I've got. I've taken some notes, but going back to the workout thing, right? So I think when you get into it, from whatever you're doing, right? I had Sean Coach on the show not long ago. Guy's a fanatic. He's like into the CrossFit thing and just awesome. I started running in 2006, right? We'll tell some stories here because we can. 2006, I'm at the golf school. Guy walks in, he's taking one of my men's 101 courses, which is a beginning men's course. And he's got a triathlon Ironman visor on, right? And the guy's kind of built like me. He's a little stocky, he's not crazy ripped or anything like that. And we kind of get on well. He's in my group. We start talking. And this is about the time, I think, after I just had my first child. And I'd put on a little weight. And I'd always been an athlete, right? And I was always pretty fit. But it's like, I'm trying to figure out how to like not get the dad bod. And I said, man, you do triathlons? He goes, yeah, I actually coach. I coach a group, the leukemia group. We do triathlons, we do marathons. I think I've done like 6 or 7 or whatever. I'm like, no way. He's like, yeah, you should think about doing something. I'm like, I could never do that. There's no chance. I'm not a runner, played all the sports or whatever. I hated to run, right? I hated to run more than a mile. He goes, you'd be surprised. So anyways, we kind of got on. By the end of the school, I just signed up for a 10K. I just started running and I had no clue what I was doing. And I always think of running as kind of like what golfers go through trying to find the answers, right? Because there's so many different ways to train. There's articles, you can watch videos. There's a whole thing. Long story short, he goes, I'll train you for your first marathon. I'm like, there's no way. So I went from 10K to marathon. It shows you a little bit about how I think too, as far as being obsessive compulsive. There's definitely a problem. This was 2005, 2006. We trained for the Chicago Marathon. Unbelievable, right? The training was insane. It's like an 18-week program. We had a whole community of runners that we would meet like once a week to do the long runs, right? Everybody's like, oh, you got to run 10 miles, 20 miles a day. No, you build up like anything else. You build up and then you do your long runs once a week and it kind of goes up and down. There's a whole science to it, which is super cool. So he trains me to do my first marathon and I'm hooked, right? So then we continue and we ran, and he's still one of my best friends to this day. Steve Hightower, shout out. I know he doesn't listen to the pod, but I miss him because him and a couple other people in Charlotte, we had a running group when I left. Then I did Chicago, and then I go and do, this is my second, I'm trying to think. This was 2006, 2008. I'm into it now. Like, I'm super fit. Like, I'm thinking ultras. Like, ultimately, I'd love to do like 100 mile or something.
That escalated quickly.
It did, because I'm just in the sicko. And luckily, I hadn't got hurt or anything. Everything's going well. We're doing our deal. We're all talking about it. And I go to Marine Corps because I'm like, how can I improve my time? Like, how can I get a little faster? And I was never fast, but I could always go long. Once I get in shape, I could like go forever at a pretty decent pace, which is great for ultras. So I go to the Marine Corps Marathon, which is in DC. You know that very well.
Yep,
You used to live in
been there
DC.
twice.
And this was like a training run for me, right? I was building up to like do the Thunder Road Marathon in Charlotte as like a PR. Like, one of my clients, or when I say clients, one of my students was in the shoe business, and he knew I was a runner. I was doing this thing, and he goes, "Hey, I've got a free pass to the Marine Corps Marathon. Do you want it?" And it was like a couple months short of the actual race I was going to do. And I was in pretty good shape. I knew I could do it. I knew I could finish it, but I was going to take it easy and whatever. I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. So I'll take the family up. We had a great time, went sightseeing a couple days before, did the whole tourist thing. It wasn't a hot day. It was like in the 50s. It was kind of like midday. It wasn't too bad. I mean, it's a little warm, but I mean, not crazy. So I get into about mile 10 or 12, and I start to feel really weird. Like, my feet were swelling up. Something was not right. Something was funky going on. I knew, just based on running so much, you have ups and downs. It's like golf, right? It's like you feel great one day and then you feel terrible. You're on these long runs for like 4 hours, 20 miles or whatever. You have ups and downs, and you just say, all right, just either you got to eat a little bit more, have something to drink, and then you'll recover. Well, I never got any better. But being the dumbass that I am, I didn't quit. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I kept going. Mile 12, mile 13, I'm feeling terrible. I'm barely able to run. My chest is hurt. Like, there's all kinds of stuff going on. And I'm like, what the heck? So long story short, I wake up in the back of an ambulance, and apparently I made it to mile 20, but I don't remember the last 4 miles. After the whole thing, I went in the hospital. I ended up getting rhabdomyolysis, which is like something that like eats your liver. It's just a random thing that what we think it was, looking back, and this is my WebMD running partners, is I had mono about 4 or 5 months earlier than that. And I think maybe some of that contributed to making me dehydrated. And they thought I was dehydrated, but I wasn't dehydrated. I drank plenty. It was just a weird, perfect storm type of situation. Anyways, I almost died. My heart rate was at 288 or something. They had to like revive me in the ambulance. Oh my God. I went to the hospital and spent like a day in the hospital, got out, did all this tests on my heart. My wife will tell you that I had some heart arrhythmia stuff, which I went to the Sanger Clinic. It wasn't that bad. I was fine. So what did I do after that? Did I quit running?
You kept running.
No. So my doctor says, yeah, maybe you shouldn't do marathons again, right? Maybe you shouldn't push yourself like that. I said, I got to do it, doc. It's like, it makes me feel good. It's just like, I feel great when I'm training and this and that. And he goes, well, just keep it to like 2 or 3 miles. So I found out this thing called streaking. And it's not taking your clothes off, okay? It's not taking your clothes off and running like Will Ferrell in Old School.
We're going to the quad.
We're going to the quad. Everybody's doing it. It's basically running every day, at least a mile a day.
Ah, okay. Micro running.
Micro running. But I said, all right, cool. I can do that. And I'm still in great shape. I just came off, like basically I'm in marathon shape. So after that, as soon as my wife and kids, stopped crying and calmed down a little bit, I'm like, okay, I'm going to prove to everybody that I'm okay. So I started running every day. 1 mile, 2 miles, 1 mile, 2 miles. And that came up to whatever. And I ran for 64 days. Almost made it a year before I got really bad shin splints. But in the midst of that, I ran 2 half marathons and PR'd in both of them. I was in like fantastic shape. So it just like calmed everybody's nerves. I'm like, I'm okay. It's all good. Long story short, then I went 2010. I ran. My father-in-law had leukemia and he beat it. I signed up for Team Leukemia and I basically raised like $25,000 and ran the Chicago Marathon again when it got really hot. That was the year that a lot of people were quitting. It got like 80 degrees in the backside and the time wasn't very good, but it didn't matter. It was like bigger purpose, right? Plus I finished another marathon. So I'm continuing to run. It's a part of my life, right? It's the whole deal. You got to keep going. And we got ebbs and flows. And I ran a couple of half marathons after that. So I ran quite a few halves. Then I had like a knee injury. It wasn't running related. I twisted my knee and had meniscus surgery. So I had a little bit of pain and whatever. So prior to coming down here, it was like COVID. All I did was lift. And I couldn't run. My knee was just bothering me and I couldn't run too much. So finally I got down here and I was like, if I can ever run, I always said, if I can ever run, I'm going to keep running, right? It's such a big deal. But it does something to you. It's not just running, right? I call it doing hard stuff, challenging yourself physically. And I'm going to jump around a little bit here, but I heard this podcast the other day with Camilo Villegas, right? And obviously he's a big workout guy, but he started working with I'd love to get this guy's name because I couldn't understand what he was saying, but a new sports psychologist before his little resurgence in the last year. And the first thing that his sports psychologist said to him was, I need you to run a certain amount of miles per day before you come see me. I thought that was interesting. Why is that? Because it does something to your brain. Puts you in a different mental state. There's a lot of people out there listening can tell me what that is, the dopamine. There's a lot of things that happen. But when you're in it, and this is what goes back, when you're in it, you don't appreciate it, okay? But when you stop doing it, then shit goes off the rails, right? It's just like you get, not that I've been depressed, but it's like I haven't been happy with like my physical body and my mental sort of awareness, I think, since I've been here. And I think this is a big part of it. So fast forward. So I'd had enough of it, right? It's not like I've stopped running, but I'd run like once a week, twice a week, take a couple weeks off, do some Peloton, do whatever, but still like just not happy with, like you said, you got to build momentum little bits at a time, right? With whatever you're doing. Big believer in that. And that's why everybody's like, I can't run a marathon. Don't worry about the marathon. Run a mile. Walk a mile. When I started out, absolutely forward momentum. When I started running a long time ago, I did what was called the Galloway method. Have you ever heard of that? It's a run-walk situation, right? It's like basically you run so many minutes, you walk so many minutes, you run so many, and after a while, you don't want to walk anymore. So my body knows how to do it. 5 weeks ago, I'd had enough. Tired of looking in the mirror, tired of feeling whatever, not sleeping good, this and that. I'm like, all right, what's the one thing that's going to get me going? Sign up for a race. So I signed up for a half marathon that happens on February 10th. I'm looking at it, I'm doing the math. 12 weeks, 14 weeks, probably good. I got 10 weeks. So I'm 5 weeks into training. And I'm just now, yesterday I did 9 miles. Today I did like a little 3-mile backup run. My body's starting to remember what it feels like to be a runner again. Not fast, okay? I'm not as fast as I used to be. I don't care. Mm-hmm. Covering the distance. Started out with some run walk stuff, but running 4 or 5 days a week now, shit's different. My mental state's different. I'm feeling different and better about myself. Started to lose a little bit of weight, and I'll lose more. You know, you got to do the diet thing or whatever. But I'm listening to Camilo. I'm like, I get it now. Like, this is part of why I was successful. And I couldn't remember how I like fed it all in, all the stuff I was doing over the years. So this leads me into my stuff, right, for next year. And takes me back into like all the guests that I've had on this podcast. It's like there's some commonalities, right, of like, what does all successful people do? One is exercise, okay? Got to do daily exercise or 3 times a week, whatever. I always say 3 times a week is kind of like middle of the road, right? You can get more than 3 days a week. You can get gains. I was so excited yesterday when I ran that 9 miles, I did not stop. When I first was going, I was stopping on 3-miler. Just walk, run. And I just kept on going. It was like unbelievable. I felt like Rocky, like running up the steps, you know, 10-minute pace or whatever the hell it is. I don't care. That's the thing. Run more, sleep better, which I've been tracking a lot with my Whoop.
Which is a byproduct of running more.
Absolutely. And then eating a little cleaner, drinking a little less, which everybody, you know, wants to say, tracking with my Whoop. And I just had that, you know, exercise is so important to our mental health, mood, and mindset. Mm-hmm. It's going to make us more productive, which is huge, especially when you get older like me. I always say, do hard stuff, right? It's like, that's why my wife doesn't get it, but it's like, I want to do a 100-mile race. I'm obsessed with ultra marathoners and then what they do and stuff, but we'll see. I want to do a marathon next year. In my group, I have a group text with the people I used to run with in Charlotte, and we're texting like, hey, I just did a mountain. They're like, fuck yeah, let's go.
That's so powerful.
Right? Yeah, and then it's like, let's go. And then it's like, we're going to meet up at some point and do another marathon. So I want to do a marathon in 2024, but I got to do the half first. Mm-hmm. Little chunks, just finish the race. And then if I can do a half, I'll be at the starting line in much better shape than I was 10 weeks ago. Meditation and reflection, right? We talked about that. I meditate, but I don't meditate frequent enough. Do you do any of that at all? Or
I did it religiously for about 3 years.
Okay.
about 2 years ago. And
Okay.
I'm starting to get back into it. I transparently gave myself the excuse that I was using the time I used to meditate for other things.
Okay.
So I need to build it back.
Yeah. Waking Up app is what I use. And listening to Ferris and Kevin Rose the other day, there was a couple others that they mentioned that I'm going to try out. Craft, I think,
Craft
was
is what I
one.
heard,
yeah. But I really like Sam Harris. I mean, I just think
Sam Harris is great.
He's great. So the Waking Up app has really been good for me. For those of you that are trying to start, and he's got a lot of good content on there too. It's not just
And as an aside to that, if meditation is too much, because it can be for a lot of people.
Sure.
What I found to be is a simpler way to get in, again, we're talking about momentum.
Yes.
The first step is the hardest.
yes,
The simplest thing that I find you can do is stealing from the Marine Corps, their breathing cycle.
Box
The
breathing?
box,
Yeah.
5 seconds in.
talk about that.
So breathing in, count 5 seconds. Hold it, 5 seconds. Breathing out, 5 seconds. Hold it, 5 seconds. And repeat that cycle. You should do it minimum 3 minutes, but the longer you do it, the benefits just continually compound. And it's more about doing it every day. And it's so simple and you don't need a guide. That's what people love saying, oh, I can't meditate. I need a guide. I need someone to work me through it. Okay, that's fine. Do the Marine Corps breathing thing. You can literally do it while you're driving. You can do it with your eyes open.
Yeah.
You can do it anywhere. It's the simplest way to get into it.
Breathing is important. There's a lot of stuff going on in the teaching circles now too about that. Steve Moore's done some good research and done some classes on that. My next thing is post more content on Instagram and TikTok of me actually being in front of the camera. Since my YouTube days and Swing You, I did hundreds of videos and I have my app and everything. Since I've shut that down, I have not been diligent about getting in front of the camera and actually sharing some information. And I'm not sure what that's going to look like yet. There's so many guys out there that are giving tips to help golfers, which is the same way with the podcast, which is great. I'm not sure we need more of that. I want to help other coaches. So it might be more like the podcast. Like Humar, I think, is great. Humar does a great job of challenging beliefs and challenging ideas that what we're doing as a coach. So mine might be more like that, but still in the forefront. And I've actually downloaded an app to do the captions and the whole thing. I've tried working with that a little bit. That would be good.
Small plug for
Yeah.
Struzzi. Humar is a coach advisory board for Struzzi. Hugh has been a phenomenal advisor. What I respect so much about Hugh is that he has firm opinions, but is not afraid to change them if someone presents something different.
Yeah, that's what debate's all about, right? The healthy debate.
Mm-hmm.
It's prove me wrong if you can, then hey, I'm with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's not enough of that out there. So kudos to Hugh. Hope to spend more time with him in 2024. I want to travel a little bit more, and we'll see whether I'm going to travel with some of my tour guys, which would be kind of fun. Don't want to be out there all the time, but a few events would be nice.
Pause there for a
Shout
second.
out to my guys if they want to have me come out. Go ahead.
As they should take you out, of course. Why
Hopefully,
not?
yeah. I can help them prepare for tournaments, which I think would be valuable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everybody benefits there too.
Yes.
That was a work-related travel item. Important.
Yes.
There's a part of you that wants to travel to go to those events because you want to measure yourself, if not a better word for that, against what's going on outside of Carlton River. Why else do you want to travel to those events?
So I can go fish more at different places.
Love it.
That's the thing is you look back and you say, what would you have done different? I wouldn't have changed much in my career, but I would have changed the fact that I should have put more resources and more time into traveling to destinations that either play golf or do fun stuff like fishing. I would have loved to go fly fishing out west and I've never done it. I'd like to go play golf in Scotland, never done it. Stuff like that. Shout out to anybody who wants to take me on a trip. But yeah, it's that kind of thing. But yeah, the travel, I just love traveling. That was one of my goals that I wrote down years ago. I was hoping my job would take me all over the world because I don't want to leave this earth without seeing Japan and Tokyo and New Zealand and Australia and everywhere. I just love to experience different places. Number 6 is look for more passive income opportunities, aka podcast sponsors. If anybody's out there who wants to sponsor the podcast. Speaking engagements, which I enjoy doing. I said I want to do a little bit more of that if anybody wants me to come speak. But just ways to make money while we're not coaching. That's always good.
I'm passionate about this. This is part of what I talk about on Struzzi a lot is golf coaches, your business has become, for better or for worse, we don't have enough time to get into this to be completely transparent, a business based on hours. A hot take, there's only so many hours in a day.
Yeah.
24. There's only so many hours you're willing to work, probably 7 max.
Yeah.
So you're capping yourself to a point. because there's always someone who will not pay at a certain price point. So the thing that I find very interesting is the coaches who are successful that have created passive income streams that feel organic and last. The hard part about passive income streams is it's the shiny ball syndrome.
Sure.
People present you with an idea. You're like, oh my God, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Love it. And you spend a ton of energy and time trying to get it up and get it going in a way that you think is useful. But hindsight's always 2020, and you look back and say, God, that was stupid. So I'm not letting you off the hook quite yet.
Yeah.
Passive income, like what's on your mind? Like, what are you thinking of? Do you have anything yet?
I think, again, it kind of leads into my number 7, which is collaborating with other coaches. So whether it's putting together more workshops, like I was reflecting on this year, I was very proud of the Low Country teaching workshop where we met, putting that group of coaches together, which was awesome. Tattersall and Krista Dunton and James Hong.
It was a hell of a lineup.
Yeah, and Will came out, which is cool. I got to do some live stuff with him and Jason Bale, that kind of stuff, but also having them either to Colleton or me going somewhere else. Like I got Cody down at Druids in Georgia, asked me to come down and do a school with him, right? So I was like, well, let's just double up and like, let's make a next day for a pro workshop. So we'll do clinics for the members one day, do a little golf school, and then the next day we'll do like a little presentation / I think live lessons is the way to go. We did it at our section summit a few months ago down in Pinehurst. We did mostly live lessons. I think it's good. I know it's difficult sometimes for people to do, but if it's done correctly, I think it's the best way to learn for the audience.
So who's the golfer in the scenario? Another coach?
No.
In a live lesson?
It can be, but no, we get like regular students.
So like how you had Will come in?
Yeah,
for the
that would be a tour player. But I mean, we get regular students to come in. Like I did a putting lesson with a guy. We had 3 or 4 full swing lessons. I just think it's a good way to do it. Stuff like that, where we can put some things together and either travel or have coaches come to me. Like Scott Cowks, one of my favorite guys out there, does probably one of the best full swing certifications in the business. I want to have him come back. Maybe James Ridyard, maybe get him to come back and do some short game stuff. I used to have James like every year at Carmel, like once a year. He'd come in and do clinics, do some lessons, and we do maybe something for the pros. So just stuff like that. And also, selfishly, it's for me to learn. Love just spending time with Mark Blackburn, some of my friends that I don't get to spend much time with. Just stuff like that. That's my current list.
I love it.
Going forward.
Those are all of them, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so
that's it for now.
Let's transition. I think this is a good transition question. We're thinking about 2024. What excites you most over the next 5 years about being a golf coach?
It's not a great answer, but it's just like what excites me every day, right? It's just like the people that I get to see, the evolution of me, right? It's like the evolution of me getting better and just where my career is going to take me. That's what I've always loved about being an instructor, is just like getting to meet so many interesting people, successful people, and getting to get to know them, spreading my information to them to help them play better, but also just building that relationship has really been what drives me, what gets me out of bed in the mornings. My wife always says she's one of the few people that she's met that actually enjoys her job. But I do. Obviously it can get wear and tear on you, and there's a lot of hours and in the hot sun and whatnot. But I mean, it's the people that keep me going. It's the success stories. It's not even just the better players or the juniors or the tour players. It's more like the average golfers. Their success stories really kind of get me going. I don't know. Let's come back to that a little bit as far as like specifics on where golf instruction is going. I mean, I know we're going to talk a little bit about AI, and I don't know a whole lot about it, but I mean, I'm using it a little bit to like chat TPT and of one app on my phone, and I'm curious about it and how it's going to affect what we do. That's all I got.
That's fair.
Point. Yeah, I mean, it's just hard to say. Like technology moves so fast, but it's come so far really in the last 15, 20 years with all the stuff that we're using now. I'm sure something exciting will be coming out. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. And you touched on something that there's 2 things. One, I enjoy my job probably, I think, as much as you do, having witnessed you today. So there's another one in your camp with you.
Yeah, we got to talk about your takes on like my day and my teaching as well at some point.
Some.
Okay, yeah, we'll get to that.
The second point I want to make is you're a serial learner. That's also something that like is very clear. And I want to understand if you can try to pinpoint how you became a serial learner, or if you think this was something that you can't necessarily pinpoint and this might be who you are.
That's a tough question. It's like, I don't know, because I kind of think about childhood was great. It was a lot of competition. I was always sort of one of the better players on the teams. I always enjoyed that part of it. I'm not sure. It's like, when is that instilled? I mean, clearly my parents probably pushed me in that direction. But I think ultimately you get into a situation where, I mean, I remember my dad saying, I'll give my dad a shout out. He wasn't crazy about me playing golf. He wanted me to play football, or I played all those. But when I started playing golf, I think he was a little disappointed, and he saw how passionate I was about it and that I wanted to play in college, which happened.
Glenville State College?
Yeah, Glenville State College. Yeah, shout out to the Pioneers. He said, whatever you're going to do, just be the best. Try to be the best. I've always kind of lived by that. It's like, if I'm going to do something, I want to be the best. And if you enjoy it, then that's a lot easier to do that. And it's just, I don't know, it's just always been what I do. It's not about golf. It's more about people, right? It's just like, people just fascinate me. Every day I just try to dig into, like, why is that person like that? Or what are they thinking and why? And that's why I'm always like asking the curious questions, I think. And that's probably why the podcast came about ultimately. But I don't know, people just fascinate me. And then the fact that I can help them play a sport a little bit better is pretty cool. But I don't know. I just want to be the best. I told you, like, I still want to be number one. I want to be the best instructor. I want to be number one. And I haven't gotten the top 50 yet. So I got a ways to go, but I'm going to keep trying, right? Again, but even if I don't get there, I'm going to be better at the end, just like the marathon thing, right? If I didn't sign up at all, I'd still be a fat ass loser, that I was 5 weeks ago, right? But now I feel better. 5 more weeks from now, I'm going to be a lot better. And then next year, I'm going to be even better, right? So it's just the way I view things, whether you're doing your job or just trying to be good at something. But I don't know. I've always been driven, always, I think, a little bit obsessive, right? I mean, I think it's just to a detriment. You're not going to find somebody that's number one in something that hasn't sacrificed something, right? That's probably important to them, whether it's their family or relationships or whatever. I mean, it's just part of the deal. So I'm trying to like just juggle all of that. Mm-hmm. I'm a people pleaser, which I think a lot of times to my detriment. I'm almost too nice to people. And a lot of times in the past, my wife will tell you that people walk all over me because I'm trying to give too much. So I'm trying to do better at that, of like recognizing when people are trying to sort of use me, say no a little bit more. Like, I can't do it all. I can't be everything to everybody. I'm really good at achieving a single task. If I get too many balls in the air, then I start to fail. So it's just, again, just things you pick up over the years of sort of like self-awareness. Yeah,
that's phenomenal. To your point about trying to appease everyone, there's an ongoing study. It's the longest study of human life in history. I think it's in its 80th year. I recently saw some information that I'm going to put on Instagram about this. The part that I think is extremely pressing to what you just brought up. The whole thing is about trying to identify human happiness and contentness. And it's said by the age of 50, the people who are healthiest by the age of 80 is because they're happiest at 50 and they have less relationships, in air quotes, that are deeper. So quality over quantity.
I got a chance to live a few more years. So you're telling me?
Yes, exactly.
Yes. All right.
Devote your time. It's about saying no. It's about prioritizing. Yeah. It's about balancing in your definition of balance, because we talked about this. Like balance is something that I think got popularized in Silicon Valley, and like all these tech bros talked about balance and tried to measure it.
It's bullshit. Yeah.
Balance is different from everybody. It changes daily. It absolutely changes monthly. You just have to be consciously aware of it to know when you're aggressively out of balance in one way or the other.
Fair. Yeah.
So that small side is to come back to something. So you talk a lot about people, and like this is not just a today thing. You've brought this up a lot. Your podcast, I have been fortunate, and I truly do mean fortunate, to be on the receiving end of people talking about your podcast in a very like third person. Like I'm the third person in that scenario.
That's nice.
And it's amazing, the constant positive feedback and the impact that people tell me when I'm fortunate enough to be associated with it. So the question I have to you is, what's one way your coaching has changed someone's life in a way that you didn't expect?
Ooh, gosh, I can't give you like one name. Like I could mention, he wouldn't care, like Steve Moore, how we talked about, which I want to blow up because I think he's an up-and-coming star in our game. And you should check out Shamrocks and Shanks. I'll give him a nice shout out there. New podcast. He's doing a fantastic job. But we roomed together at a workshop not long ago, and we had conversed over DMs and messages before then. I felt like we kind of knew each other before we got there, but he shared a story where he said he was in kind of a bad place. And then my podcast really gave him hope and like gave him some drive to like get out of it and get better. And improve, and he's doing the deal. Like we talked about, I mentioned him at dinner. He's like, he's out there trying to get better, which is all you can ask, right? Doing the hard stuff, traveling and watching coaches and building relationships. But that floored me. And I get that not as powerful as he was because it was face to face. I was like, holy shit. It's like when I think I'm going to like stop doing this, something like that happens. And I'm like, I got to keep going, right? It's like, I want to serve other people. I want to serve others. And that's my whole mission. I want it to be my legacy is that I've given more than I took.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Where do you think that serving part of you comes from? Because that is very antithesis of most people in today's society.
Yeah. I mean, I got to credit a lot of the programs and the lectures and the stuff that I listened to in my early days at Dana's, back when we used to be able to burn CDs.
Napster.
It was before, it was like Spider or LimeWire or something. Yeah, it was
How many computers did you go through?
A decent amount. Yeah, and I had a burner and the whole thing. So I, again, sort of was infatuated with Tony Robbins and then found out that his mentor was Jim Rohn, which I've mentioned plenty of times on this podcast. But changing your mindset of going, gosh, I've got this all wrong, right? It's like in my early 30s when I thought I was worth a shit and was pretty good and I wasn't very good at all, just because a couple people talk nice about you and blow you up or you might win an award or whatever. It's like I knew nothing. It's like it wasn't fulfilling, one. And two, I just completely flipped the switch and changed my mindset. And like, I've got to start pouring into others. I've got to start pouring into other people. And when I started doing that, things changed. Like Jim Rohn says, for you to change or for things to change around you, you have to change. It's not about everybody else. Like, don't be a complainer, bitching about what you don't have, this and that. And that was me. I was just like, I can't believe I didn't win this. Or I can't believe I didn't blah, blah list or whatever. And like, what are you doing? And then that was the time where one of my mentors, Charlie King, shout out to Charlie King, was right when I started at Carmel. And I'll never forget this. And he called me on the phone. He said, how are things going? I'm like, gosh, I mean, it's good, but I thought I'd be busier. I thought I'd show up and everybody would just like flock to me or whatever. He's like, no, he gave me some program ideas. Like, you got to start giving some stuff away. And that really helped. And then we started talking about awards and like, I can't win the Teacher of the Year award. He's like, why are you worried about that? First off, like, what are you doing? I go, well, I'm teaching all these hours and stuff. And he's like, that doesn't mean anything. Everybody's doing that. What are you giving back? Who's the seminar guy? He's like, are you the seminar guy? What are you known for? I'm like, no. He goes, well, do a seminar. So that's when the Guru Workshop started. And it just snowballed into something amazing with the help of everybody that came to speak, right? It wasn't about me. So when it suddenly was like not about me and was about everybody else and helping everybody else, things changed and now we're here. But I mean, don't get that message wrong, right? It's like, it's not about what you get. When you give something, it's not about getting something back. It's more about what you become as a person.
I think the Guru Workshop is a very specific and real example of this. So talk more about that. I'll provide a lead into this. So when you told this story at dinner, the first thing I thought of was in the NFL, there are a handful of coaches that are constantly referred to as they have coaches' trees. They have trees of coaches under them that have become well-known and wildly successful because they held roles underneath of one specific head coach at the time that gave them an opportunity, gave them exposure, grew them, acted as a mentor, and like now that's expanded across the NFL. Is there an example there? Is that a fair example to bring about you, like what you've done for the coaching community since then?
Not with the workshop. So the workshop was more about bringing the other top coaches in to attract younger coaches or other coaches to come learn from them. So the way I did it, shout out to Andrew Rice that's taken it and run with it, Coach Camp, 100 times better than my Guru workshops. Him and his wife have done a phenomenal job. But it was more about just like, how do I get people together to share information and learn from the best coaches in the business and the relationships that I've built, just like when I started the podcast, and like the phone calls that I've had countless times with top coaches, like why not be able to share that with the world? And again, I told you earlier, it's like it started with just me. I did it one day. Nobody was asking me to speak. I was nobody. Like, okay, well, nobody's going to ask me to speak. I'm going to put it together and I'm going to talk. So I did a half a day seminar and then I did live lessons in the afternoon and like 15 people showed up. Cool. Better than one, right? So the next year that I invited Andrew Rice and I invited John Graham, we had me and us three, and we did presentations in the morning and then we did live lessons in the afternoon and like 25, 30 people showed up. The next year we added a few more, right? So I'd had Cameron McCormick, Mark Blackburn, John Sinclair, Claude Harmon, James Ridyard, James Hong, Kirk Aguri. I mean, I've had so many like just top coaches. It's been unbelievable, right? So every year we just started adding more and more and more. It's probably why I got on some of the lists that I did, but it wasn't the intent. It's just like, all right, what can I do? Again, having that servant attitude to share with everybody else.
Well, and probably fairly deep down, like you wanted to learn from all the other coaches.
That's the set.
Selfishly, that's fine.
Absolutely. And that's the reason why I do the podcast. Like I get to talk to these people and learn from them and share their awesome information with everybody else.
I inherently believe that all human beings are selfish, and that comes across bad when most people don't understand where it's coming from. But like if you think about it from like first principles, root cause, we as human beings would not be alive as a organism if we were not crazy selfish when we were way back in the Cro-Magnon ages. We would be eaten. And like that selfishness has obviously evolved. But at the end of the day, I actually have a deeper appreciation for individual people when I understand where their actions probably come from. And it's probably coming from a selfish place, but that's fine because I get where it's coming from. And I understand you ideally a little bit better. I can see your perspective deeper. I understand that like genuinely there's probably some selfishness that starts it.
Oh, 100%. You want to be adored. You want to be admired. You want your peers to think you're good. Okay?
Which is fine.
That's just human nature. Anybody that says they don't give a shit about whether people like you is lying.
Well, they're not being authentic.
You're right, exactly. Yeah. That's why I was back to like, I'm a people pleaser, which again, to my detriment, a lot of times it upsets me when somebody says, you know, something bad about me or like you hear something negative about it, which is normal. But I think sometimes I need to be a little bit more of an asshole, like a little bit more of that grit to myself, which I probably have gotten a little bit more, especially in my coaching. I definitely have because I've got more confident. But overall, yeah, I just want everybody to like me.
Everybody feels that way to a degree.
Exactly.
And if they're,
it's normal.
Right. And if they're covering that up, then they're just actually masking something, being authentic. That's fine. Yeah. It's totally fine.
Yeah. What else you got?
Let's talk about some topics. This slightly came up. So Glenville State College, you were on the golf team. Coach Tim Carney.
Yeah, wow. Nice research.
Of course, man. Talk to me about Tim. How did he impact you?
Tim was great. He's not coaching anymore, but he's still there in Glenville. Just a great guy, right? Kept me eligible for the most part. I mean, that was probably the biggest. That was probably the biggest thing he did because I was not the greatest student. I was great at partying and slapping the golf ball around. But yeah, the rest of it was not awesome. But I did get my degree. Ended up graduating from West Virginia State. Not a lot of people know that. I actually left Glenville, turned pro with like a semester to go, which is crazy. There was other factors in that. And then ended up going as an assistant pro, working 80 hours a week. I went to night school and finished my degree.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Because my mom said, it was actually my wife. Honestly, I would give her a shout out. This was before we were married, but we were dating. She's like, you need to go back to school. So I went back to school and got it done.
I want to talk a little bit more about Tim. I mean, you spent, 3 years with him? As
3.5. Yeah.
I think this is one of the amazing things about sports and coach and player. You said this a couple times today where like you thought of a couple players as if they were your second sons. What was your relationship with Tim?
It was good. I mean, I think he probably expected a bit more out of me. I was sort of the golden child coming in and didn't quite have the career that I probably should have, but that was on me. But no, he was great. He was definitely like a father figure to all of us. And it's cool, like the guys that I played golf with in college, the majority of them are still in the golf business, which is interesting. A bunch of guys from Ohio and from around the country. I think they probably keep in touch with him a little bit more than I do, but he was great. I mean, he wasn't like a teacher. He didn't try to like help you with your golf swing. He pretty much just kind of kept us in line, kept us out of trouble for the most part. Just a fantastic human being.
All right, great.
Yeah.
So going back to one of your passions that takes your mind off of work, so fishing. Let's get really specific. Like you're a big fan of Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss is hyper specific about the tools that you use in your craft. So like let's talk about your fishing setup.
Yeah. So when I moved, the evolution has been, I've loved to fish for anything, but growing up in West Virginia, I trout fished a lot, did a lot of bass fishing with spinning equipment, and then actually went to a fly fishing school.
Serial learner. There you are.
Yeah, it was so cool. Like, gosh, I could go back tomorrow. Just a really cool old school lodge. It was one of those like Southern Draw here in Bluffton. This was a place, it was like West Virginia Outfitters, I think. Going in there and always shopping or whatever. And they're like, you ever fly fishing? Like, nah, I have no clue. He's like, well, we do a school. Here's how it works. And we take you here and we show you how to cast. And after that, again, like running, I was hooked and started fly fishing a ton. When I moved to North Carolina, continued to like go in the winter. That was my getaway. That was my Monday. Like it was about a 2-hour drive. I'd go to Elkin and go to Stone Mountain and fly fish all day, wading and getting off the grid, right? So now I'm fast forward moving to Bluffton. Now it's saltwater, more about red fishing, right? So redfish, then I had no clue about how to redfish. So we tried some boats, did some like Freedom Boat Club stuff where we got out. If you don't have the right kind of boat, I've taken back to the serial learner. After I figured out I had no clue what I was doing, I hired a couple guides. So I went out with guides and just killed them with questions and picked their brains and learned a ton. Caught some tarpon, learned how to catch redfish, and then got into kayak fishing. So now I've researched kayaks for 2.5 years. So I bought a really nice Hobie kayak that's the Mercedes of kayaks. It's a great setup and a trailer. So that's what I do on Mondays now. And it gets me into like the little creeks, places where boats can't go most of the time. It's great exercise. It's pedal, but still it's good exercise, but I love it. That's my Monday sort of getaway.
What's your reel setup? St.
Croix is like my go-to rods. I've got 3 or 4 St. Croix rods. It's kind of bougie. I get it, but I mean, I can afford it now. I'm big on the equipment is important. And that was the same with fly rods. I bet I got more money invested in fly rods than I ever did in golf clubs because it does make a difference. It's like equipment in golf. I mean, I started out with a very basic fly rod, and then once I started getting into it, I'm like, oh, wow, this feels different. Like, and you start messing around with casting, it's a big deal. So, yeah, I've got a lot of money tied up in the fishing stuff, but I love it. Red fishing, there's nothing like it.
So what do you mean by that?
I don't know. It's just, I love being outdoors. Even when I don't catch fish, it's a great day. It's like just being out. Like the low country is so beautiful. Like I take a lot of pictures and probably post a few on Instagram, but I mean, it's just like, I don't want to ever take for granted how gorgeous this area is. And I just learn something. And it's kind of like anything else. I learn something every time I go fishing. Like you got to know the tide schedule. You got to know the time to go fishing. You got to plan ahead. There's just so much to it. Somebody would ask me like, what's the joy of catching a 12-inch trout on a fly rod? I'm like, it's an art. It's like the presentation, picking the fly, the cast. The whole thing is you've got to fool the fish. River runs through it. Have you ever seen that movie? Have you really?
My dad made me watch it a long time ago.
I knew we were friends for a reason. If you just said no, we'd have a big problem. But it's like, the line where he says to catch a fish and not know how to catch a fish, that would upset me. It's kind of like going to Augusta and not really being a golfer, getting to play. That always pissed me off with some of my students back in the day. But it's another subject. But yeah, it's just like, it's the whole thing. Like it's education, right? It's like, you want to know how to do it. And then education is experience, right? It's like the more I do it, I've had plenty of times where I go out, I don't catch any, but I learned something. The water was different. The wind was different. The tide was different. Like what happened, right? It's like, do I need to use a different bait? So it's just a lot. And I talk to the guys at Southern Draw. I wear them out. Monday morning, I go in there like, all right, where do I need to go? What's going on?
God damn, here comes Jason again.
Exactly. They hate to see me coming. Who's this tourist, right? But yeah, it's like anything else, but it's awesome, man. It's just like when you hook one of those big ones, whew, they fight like nothing. That's twice their size. It's unbelievable. I caught a 90-pound tarpon. It's like the fish of a lifetime. That was with a guide.
On a kayak?
No, this was on a boat. This was a skiff, very small boat. It pulled us all over the place. That was just crazy. I want to do that again.
To your point about like not knowing how to catch a fish, my family has a Vex. I'm the only person that's caught a fish, the males in my family. And it fell off the line. So I don't know if that counts. My grandfather, he was first generation over from Italy.
Yeah.
He just worked his entire life. Like he didn't get to do the pleasures of life. And my dad grew up in the center city, Philadelphia. Wasn't anywhere near a lake worth fishing in. He's tried to catch fishes since then.
Not for everybody.
He exposed me to Boy Scouts. So like we got to go and like do the fishing thing. And I had friends that also got me fishing. So like I've caught fish. I'm just not a fisherman. So like the art of fishing is foreign to me.
It's a lot. And again, it's like I've been doing it all my life, right? It's like since I was a kid. Like I gave credit to this kid that, it's funny, I ran into my high school buddy at the wine store, hadn't seen in years, right? And he's friends with you and Roger Bullard. Roger probably never listened to this podcast, but he taught me how to fish. He taught me everything. Like we've bass fished together, we carp fished together, we fished everywhere. I still have lessons that he taught me when we were 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. I use right now. And he's a great fisherman. He should have like gone on TV and do the whole deal. But I mean, it's just like things you pick up along the way. But I've been doing it for so many years. You know, I got a lake in my backyard, and I go most evenings, if it's not raining, I usually fish 20 minutes before dark every night.
Really?
Yeah. Catch bass, little bass out in my backyard.
That's
yeah.
a fun little fact.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That's my getaway. Like if I have 20, 30 minutes before dark, I always fish till dark.
That's phenomenal. I take walks with my dog, but that's better.
No, I just want to wet a line. I just want to get out there and
wet a line.
Yeah, just make a few casts.
I love that saying. That's great. Love it.
What else? What do you got?
All right. So here's an interesting one. Let's see. I got a couple interesting ones here. So Mount Joy is a band, is like a mix of like folk and rock band that I'm really into right now.
I know Mount Joy.
Phenomenal.
Yep.
Love them. Saw them in concert live at Windjammer last year. We already bought tickets to see them again in Charleston. They're going to be at the Firefly Distillery. Looking forward to that. So they have a song called Rearrange Us. And there's a line in that song that says, "It feels like a short life. It feels like a long time when I remember everything. They tell us that pain don't shame us. It's just a part of growing up." How do you think about struggle and pain?
What comes to mind immediately is just struggles and failure, making mistakes and learning from your mistakes. It's interesting. The first part of that really kind of resonates with me. Is like, how old are you?
33.
33. Yeah. So you're super young. You're just starting out. You know, I'm 50, and it's like, it's the first time I kind of started thinking about mortality a little bit, right? It's weird. Like you kind of avoid it, but you start doing the math. That's the first time I like started doing the math. You just have to like reel it back in and go enjoy every day. Don't treat it as a negative, treat it as a positive, of where you've got to almost reinvent yourself. And that's kind of where I feel like I'm at right now, is reinventing myself for like the back nine, I guess. It's a cool thing, but I like that. There's a lot to unpack there, but I think most of it is enjoying what you can remember, because it's like the older you get, you start to forget some of the things you did when you're in your younger days. You know, stuff pops up every now and again. It's funny because I have like a photographic memory, but if I don't want to remember it, I don't.
Put it in the archives.
It's weird. Yeah. In second, third grade, I had like a genius IQ. I'm getting super transparent now, right?
I love it. Let's keep going. Come on. What's a genius IQ? How do you know? What's the score?
I don't remember. It was like 168 or something. I don't know. I was in second grade, but all I know is through high school, things came really, really easy to me. Like, and I didn't know why. I could just memorize stuff. I could basically flip back through pages in my mind and read stuff, but I didn't comprehend it. Like, it didn't stay with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could regurgitate it, which I can go into the education system, which I think is hugely flawed.
Agreed.
Because of people like me that could just kind of breeze through it. Now, it caught up to me when I was in college because the information was a little bit harder. I didn't have as much time being a golfer and whatnot.
You trained yourself to remember things specifically, not necessarily problem solve and creative think.
100%.
Which creative thinking is what is missing most
out
of the growing population.
Yeah, I totally agree. So there has to be some other way to train people's minds. You know, I don't think the answer is not going to college, but I mean, it's just sometimes you're like, do you really need to go to college? Can't believe I said that, but
I agree.
But then I found out I got some testing done because I was like struggling on tests. I was a really bad test taker, and I've come to find I had dyslexia. So I had like a very slight, it's not crazy, but it was a little slight learning disability. So here I am like told I was a genius, and then now they're telling me that I have trouble learning. So this was first couple years in college. I did some tutoring. I'm trying to think back. Like, it's a lot of times like you block stuff out. Like, I really don't want to remember that, but I remember a lot of stuff. So that's when I started writing things down. I don't know why it helped, but then I started writing things down. So I started remembering things better because I could see it twice. Right? I could read it, write it down, see it twice. And then I started getting it. After I left school and went back to school, I made straight A's because I learned how I studied better and it helped me.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I don't know.
There's something to be said for the definitions. You were given a label of being a genius, and then you were given a label of a learning disability. But at the end of the day, the two of them, I think, like we've come to learn, you were given those labels really early, and I think in the understanding of these parts of human evolution and human brain. Think about people who are on the spectrum. They are very deficient in specific areas, but hyper efficient and like off the charts impressive in other areas. And it tends to be the arts. Those people are, because they're so hype, like their brain is so hyper specific on one specific part of life.
Yeah. So I took art lessons. I took piano lessons. I wish I would have stuck with that. It's funny, my son's learning to play guitar now. And I wish I would have stuck with piano. It'd been cool. I'm still very good at drawing and art and stuff. And my daughter got some of that from me 'cause she's a really great artist. But yeah, I had some of that, and I enjoyed it. I was doodling and cartooning. I remember in grade school, I was trying to get a cartoon published. We almost did, I think. We didn't quite get there.
Do you still have it?
Sure, I got stuff somewhere. Yeah, I remember it was called Goobers.
Goobers. What was it about?
It's just little guys. It was just
doing
like
what?
Doing whatever. But it was just like the goober was a little guy that looked like a marshmallow with legs, and just me and a friend of mine used to draw it. But yeah, I did a lot of painting, a lot of sculpting and stuff like that.
So you have a very strong creative outlet.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
for sure. Yeah, and like when my family is like, they want to like draw something or like write something, like I could do calligraphy pretty well. I was the scoreboard guy when I was an assistant or head pro because I could do calligraphy pretty good without any training, that kind of thing. But yeah, I was always kind of in that creative mindset, I guess.
Present day, what do you think is your creative release? I
mean, probably fishing. It would definitely be that. I don't do a whole lot. I don't do any drawing or anything anymore. I don't paint. I'm not really sure. I mean, that takes up all my time. Basically, teach 5-6 days a week and go fishing and
family.
Now, family. So like Sunday's my family day, Monday's my fishing day. Then I bust my ass for 5 days and get after it. Kind of boring sounding, but it gives me a little bit of a breather.
Yeah, I mean, humans, while we're also social and we look for approval everywhere, that's just natural. Like we need rhythm. We need repeatability.
I'm probably more structured than I think I am. I can thank my wife to that. She's super structured. Made both of my kids that way. I guess I do like structure, but then I enjoy impromptu stuff as well.
Like this random show.
Yeah, like the random show.
Yeah, it's necessary. Add spice to life.
I love it, yeah. I've not talked about this stuff probably in a couple of years on the pod. So it's cool.
It's because no one's asking you the questions.
That's right. I'm always the other guy on the other side of the mic. So yeah, I hope this doesn't come out like a complete idiot, but that's fine.
Nah, dude, this is phenomenal. I feel very fortunate to be asking these questions. Here's something interesting too. So this is an observation that is born out of a conversation with my wife. Her name's Mimi. I said, Mimi, how would you feel if like I ended up being bald? She's like, no, like I would not feel good about that at all. I was like, okay, I actually didn't expect that.
Wow.
But thank you for telling me the truth.
Yeah.
And she's like, you can't be bald this early in life. And that question was born out of the fact that I have a natural widow's peak. It's hereditary. It's in my family.
You got a receding thing going on.
Correct.
It's going to happen.
Right. Yes.
It's pretty thin.
Here's where we're going.
It's okay. I'm just saying it's going to happen.
I'm fighting against father.
I think bald guys are cool, man.
I'm glad I have one person in my camp. Yeah. Now I'm even on both sides.
Yeah.
So where I'm going with this is, I'll tell my story first. So after she said this to me, I went on to your point about hyper-focused on something brand new. I learned about male pattern baldness, how it occurs and why it occurs.
Okay.
And ultimately...
Probably was something I would have done.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, we all believe like it's hereditary. There is actually things you can do about it. And a lot of it is due to sebum is what is accrued on the top of your head based off of hair follicles excreting and like you're just sweating naturally. And as sebum accumulates, it blocks the hair follicles, which means that new hair follicles can't grow or the current ones die off. Okay. It's like a plant. So like my thought process was at the time, I was like, oh, well, this is interesting. Now that I've learned this, I randomly was looking at something on Instagram and I was like, why are so many golfers bald?
I know the answer to that because they wear hats.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So like
Max Homa looks awesome until he takes his hat off and he's got a 5 head.
It's true.
They all do it. My son's, we talked about it the other night, like he's got the flow. Be careful because you're going to...
It's going to go. Yeah, it's going to disappear.
It's pushing it back. Yeah.
The sun needs to hit your head. Like the sun needs to help grow your hair with you. It's a process.
I love it.
So here I am. I'm on a journey to fight my widow's peak.
Okay.
And it was all born out of the fact that I've now spent a lot of time with golfers and golf coaches.
Yeah.
You have a nice head of hair. It's solid.
Yeah. And I don't wear a hat all the time. Like I only wear a hat probably when I play, when I fish. Like very rarely, like when I coach, I don't wear a hat.
Yeah, you weren't wearing one today.
Yeah.
And so like I'm now at that place as a golfer. I will not wear a hat while I golf. I wear aviators. And I had one dude, he goes, dude, Jason, you look like Mike McDaniels. You look like the hottest football coach in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
You just got this vibe about you. I'm like, hell yeah, dude. That's what I need.
How cool is that guy?
He's great.
Gosh, his TikToks, he's not doing it, but I mean, the ones they post like at the press conferences, so good.
He just doesn't give a fuck.
You know, it's so good.
It's refreshing.
I love it.
That's my journey on male pattern baldness.
Okay.
all the golf coaches out there, here's another hot take of mine. We'll see where this goes. We have been conditioned to believe that the sun is bad for us. I believe it is the exact opposite.
I 100% believe that.
Take off the hat. If you're not comfortable not wearing sunscreen yet, I'm cool, but you got to get there eventually. Here's what I've learned. This is a Tim Ferriss experiment. I've run it myself.
Andrew Huberman.
My guy.
Yeah, there you go.
Amazing.
Yes.
Yes, this is where I also got this information from.
Yep.
What matters most with preventing excessive and damaging sun exposure are really two things. I simplified it for myself. I take zinc supplement and I only eat organic. The second you put seed oils in your body, seed oils, I think personally, based off my own recent experiences, they are the single worst thing humans can put in their body and contribute to bloat and inflammation and excessive oversensitivity to sun exposure.
Interesting.
Which we think sunscreen helps, but sunscreen is a topical solution, which is the exact opposite of trying to identify root cause, which is what I'm obsessed with. And here's the other part that only reinforces my thought process on this is if you look at sunscreen from anywhere outside the United States, specifically go and try to buy something from France, they have a very, very short ingredients list and all the bad shit is not in non-US based topical products. It's all this complex of putting us back into the system of industrial healthcare complex.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go in the route of what Huberman talks about, where you need to get sun exposure within the first 5 minutes as you get up.
Yep, I tried to do that. Yep.
Go listen to his podcast with Tim. His podcast is amazing. He has his own.
Yep.
And follow him on Instagram. But yeah, that guy blows my mind.
What surprised me most about him is like, how is he the first dude to talk about this at scale? He's not the first one to know this.
Did you hear his background? Like, go listen to his first podcast with Tim. Dude had like a rocky growing up. He was a mess and found his way and then went to Stanford. Talking about failure turning into success. That dude's unbelievable. But it didn't happen overnight. Like, it was a pretty amazing process. Like, to hear his story. That's cool.
That's my journey on sun and mountain.
I love it. But yeah, I mean, I know that light and sun is important. And blue light's not bad. I've heard like it's not as bad as people were talking about, like as far as the phones. But again, that's why it's important for us to get out into nature. Why do I love fishing? Sunlight, it's the whole thing, right? It's like it just changes our mind. It changes our mental health a ton. And that's like, gosh, I didn't remember how good it felt to like finish a hard run and just be like so satisfied as I do now. Yesterday, after that 9 miles, I was just like, holy shit, this is what I've been missing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you got to go on 9 miles. But I'm just saying do some hard stuff. Do something. Go push yourself and you'll thank yourself for it. Unbelievable. So we just opened up a French wine, Parvel de Luz Margaux, which is very nice.
Oh, that is nice. A little more floral.
Yeah, definitely some more floral notes.
The earthiness of the other one.
Yeah, the Dio is more in that sort of dark cherry, leather, chocolat variety.
We're just some classy bitches over here.
Yeah, we are. No shit.
All right, so let's get back to golf. I mean, we got a bunch of fellow coaches that listen. I think this is going to be entertaining and also enlightening for a second here.
Okay,
and we'll see where this goes.
Yeah.
So throughout the day, while taking a bunch of other notes, I took stock of all of the tools / gadgets that you have in the dojo.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we have 2 stationary cameras. One is face on. One is down the line. You've got one red iPhone, which is...
What's an iPod Touch?
Get out of here.
No.
It's not even an iPhone?
No.
Love it.
Yeah, it's cheaper.
True, good point.
And the camera works just as good.
Love it.
Yeah.
There you go. Small little tidbit. That's face on. You have one iPad down the line.
Yeah, and I got another iPod Touch that usually is there, but it broke. And then, so I put the iPad in there because TrackMan works nicely with any iOS device.
So that's where you have TrackMan app, correct?
No, just the TrackMan camera.
Got it. Okay.
I've run it through the PC desktop.
Okay.
So, yeah.
One thing I noticed about TrackMan and your usage of TrackMan, you're on it constantly, not to overburden the player, but you're on it to confirm what you're seeing. And when necessary, you use it to point out a point you're trying to make with data.
A change. Yeah.
Perfect.
That's fair. I got it running the whole time.
Yeah.
Like 99% of the time, if we're in the dojo, we got TrackMan running. Yeah, and you'll notice that some of and just knowing your player, some like don't really pay attention to it, which is fine. And I'll point out some things, and some are super into it.
Well, your last player took 2 pictures,
Yes.
which was great.
Yeah.
And you had your other junior player, I think, were putting a voice recording into.
Yeah, I did what's called a screencast at the end. So I did a before and after, talked about what we worked on, and that emailed that to him, and he gets it in an email form. So
how many players do you think should receive that type of coaching from you? That can be a lot, and not every player needs it.
Which one?
That level of detail, like a screencast, after session notes, those kinds of things.
I think most of them do. I mean, not all of them. I'd say 75%. They don't all ask for it. Like, I'll tell them. Like, a lot of times it's weird because I just sort of let the student sort of figure it out a little bit. You notice I have a whiteboard on the back. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times, most of the time, I'll write down what we work on the whiteboard, and then I'll have them take a picture of it. That's like super old school, but I think it's effective because it makes them take some accountability. Or like my beginner today, I'll make them repeat it back to me. Right. So I was like, okay, tell me the acronym that we were working on and this and that. So
FWT.
Yep, FWT. So it comes in different forms, but I'd say probably I do 50% screencast. Once they figure out I can do a screencast, then they always want it.
So you don't pull it out all the time.
Yeah, I don't always pull it out because it takes me a bit of time. So like I got to save 5 minutes at the end and do it, but it's effective. I mean, if I was a student, I'd want to have that probably. It depends on how they learn best and do they want to really look videos and whatnot. But yeah, so continue. Sorry.
I like it. We talked about this.
What was the rest of the stuff in the dojo? What did you notice?
Oh, dude, there's at least 10 other things here.
Okay, tell me.
So we talked about body track. You're moving to smart to move.
Yes.
Force plates.
Yep.
So you have Sam Putt Lab. You've got that hooked up to a laptop, and you have their vision boards.
Yes.
Because you have 2 sets of holes, cups, I mean.
Yes.
For putting. The perfect putter. Mm-hmm. What's that?
It's just basically a ramp where you roll balls down.
Yep.
You can take it on the putting green and basically show people breaks and speed and how that affects different slopes and whatnot. It's also a good way to set up putting drills. So it's basically like making a perfect putting stroke. And it has a laser on it where it can kind of show you where it's aimed.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's really very popular on tour and in the teaching world.
Okay, yep. Love it. You had a couple impact cubes. You used one for an outside buffer, like a bumper for your new
barrier.
Player. Yep. You've got the Tour Striker Smart Ball, which is a hilarious use of Smart Ball considering it hangs from your neck. But I digress. And it's a fluffy little pillow, basically.
I love it.
You have multiple bands and a few med balls.
Yep.
What do we use those for?
Yeah, I use bands a lot. So I'll hook them up to people and either move them in the opposite direction and make them do the work or move them where I want them to move. But most of the time it's the opposite. Like I'm usually use a resistance band and make them stretch it the other direction so they can start to feel, mostly it's body pivot stuff. And I've got hooks and little things I can hook to their belt or their belt loops and that type of thing. So it's not, and then I'll show them some drills. Like I'll hook some things up to like the door handle and show them some sort of workout stuff. I'm not a trainer, but just more resistance stuff.
That feels like something you would expose a more advanced player to. Is that fair?
Possibly, yeah. I'd say that's fair.
Have you ever done it with a beginner player?
Not a beginner, no. Because like we talked about, like when I teach beginners, it's typically from the grip backwards, right? So it's educating their hands, getting them to understand, what the club should feel like, what the face alignments should feel like, and how they move their arms to move the club, and then get their body to respond to the swinging of the club, which is a much different philosophy than an intermediate or better player, which would be sort of the opposite.
Like it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the handy-dandy alignment sticks that we all stole from the snowplow aficionados.
Yeah, driveway markers.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I use tons of those, as you saw. Like, I use them as references, constraints, whatever. I use those probably more than anything. And then also putting them out in front of people, like you saw me do did I do the goalpost drill?
Yes,
So I do that one probably on the daily to get people a visual of where the ball needs to start. And again, all comes back to intention. Mm-hmm. Intention changes motion. And I'm a firm believer that it starts with intention and you got to move the people differently and get them to change the way they move. But without the picture and the intent, I think you're running into a brick wall.
I like it. So the last thing I had here is you had a couple floaties. One large one that looked like it was just a really big floaty that you used as a barrier for the lead leg.
Oh, that was a foam roller.
Foam roller.
Yeah.
That was a big ass foam roller.
Yeah, it was a big foam roller. Yeah, I was putting that out in front of the left leg to keep the kid from sliding his hips too much. Pelvis is sliding towards target.
We just went through probably 12 to 15 different things here.
Yeah, and K-vest at the bottom, which I don't use that often.
Yeah, I didn't even see that.
Yeah, that was the 2 cases at the bottom. And then I've got hack motion for the wrist, which is over on the desk. All right, pretty much it. Yeah, that's all I need.
Well,
in my hands.
Yeah, in your eyes.
And I was moving people around a lot.
Yes.
So that's, not as much as I used to, but still a very valuable tool. And you notice, like, especially the last guy, like every time I moved him, the next shot was good. Mm-hmm. And he even said it, like, when you moved me, like I could feel it. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who aren't grabbers,
can be done respectably.
Can be done.
Yeah. And that was what I was going to say. You didn't, regardless of skill level, you were helping every player get into a physical position. Didn't matter where they were in their journey of golf. Is that purposeful?
Define physical position.
You were putting them in a spot, in a feel, in a finish, a portion of the backswing. You were putting their back right hip in a spot, which was in coordination to where their chest should be. You were putting them in a pose, I think is a better way to put it.
But I was also moving them in directions as we were doing that and describing that as I did it. Ultimately, it's to get them to feel an exaggerated movement, I guess, for lack of a better term. But it's like using your words is one way to teach, but I think it's probably the least effective way to get somebody to change. One, they can misconstrue the language, but 2, it's tough to get somebody to feel it if they don't know how to do it. So it's like putting things in the way, which is like constraints-led learning is one way, and getting them to sort of figure out how to organize themselves around that. I use that a lot, which is what you saw with the foam roller. I'm like, hey, miss the foam roller. I didn't tell him how to do it. I just said, your lead hip can't touch the foam roller. And he turned and pushed up and You
figured it the fuck out.
Yeah. Figured it the fuck out. Yeah. So it's a combination of all that. I mean, moving people around has been one of my superpowers because I'm really good at it. It's not easy. It looks easy when somebody onlooks or they're watching me teach, but it's not that easy. It takes a lot of practice and make sure you're doing it the right way. Whether I'm moving people wrist angles or club or body rotations. I mean, I get in there. Like you saw, I get in there and get on them. It's the only way I've figured out how to get people to move differently in a really, really short way with me not having to like run my mouth a lot. That's my goal.
This brings up a really important, what I've found as someone who has received multiple golf lessons from multiple coaching professionals. What I've noticed, and I also learned this from the Inner Game of Golf, which we saw in the dojo on your bookcase, the best coaches, in my opinion, have a way of using felt experiences and communicating things that are not definites. It's more of like, I want you to feel this. I want you to experience that, or tell me how you felt this, or what did you feel there, or what did that feel like? What felt good there? What felt bad there? And you did that a lot today. Where did you get that from?
I mean, Dana taught me how to move people a long time ago, and then taught me the value of moving people. And then I sort of figured out how to move people better, just based on experience. And it's more like the way I go through things in my head is like, okay, I want this person to do this. And I will put them in positions, or I'll move them in positions to where I want, and like push them into that exaggerated feel. And then again, it allows me to like, I don't have to say anything. They're going to say something like, oh, wow, I did not realize the club needed to be that far behind me, or...
It happened 5 times today, every one of the lessons.
Right. So it's like, and that would be interesting to hear your feedback on that. It's like, I give feedback when it's warranted. I don't ever try to give feedback. I don't ever tell them it's good when it's not, right? It's like those little things that I pride myself on. Like I try to be truthful. Like the first guy that was swinging across it quite a bit, and then he did a good shot. Like again, but then you got to reel him back in and say, okay, that's playable. That's fine. We're pushing you into this direction. So he kind of got locked in on good or bad being negative or positive, which can be a detractor sometimes. But it was my job to kind of soften that and go, no, you're fine. Like you started out, you were 12 left, now you're 3. That's progress, right? It doesn't have to be positive. We're pushing you into that position, but now you got to play a ball flight. And he's like, yeah, that would work great on the golf course, right? I mean, that's all we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. So again, it's more about, and especially when we're looking at video, as you see, I do both. Like I'll explain the basic numbers of ball flight, which I think most people can get a decent handle on, and then show them, because they're all videoing their swings, most of them, but what are they looking at, right? So I give them some references of where the club needs to be based on what we're working on.
So what I noticed today is, especially in that first lesson, and it was more apparent because of his personality.
Oh yeah, he was a character.
He's the character that is self-deprecating.
Yes.
He's a talker while he does things.
Yeah.
What he's thinking, it's coming out the mouth.
Yep.
That's what I noticed right away in that first lesson was while he was aggressively self-deprecating, you brought it back to a level of equilibrium to the point of like the ball flight wasn't what you expected, but everything else said it was reasonably good and was what I would expect out of what we're working on.
Yep.
I think that's probably what I've noticed is that's the art of coaching is the best coaches are able to identify the person and the proper medium to communicate in a way that doesn't diminish what they feel and experience, but tells them you're doing a good enough job because you can't overdo it, right? It's like you can't be the person that gives them a participation award every shot.
I'm not going to do that. The older I've gotten, the less I do. Aside from like my newer players, like I'm going to be a bigger cheerleader to my beginners.
We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, which we had one today, which is important. But yeah, you're right. Continue.
The beginner was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
so tell the people out there, I actually teach beginners, like that, and I'm pretty darn good at it, right? It's like I haven't forgot.
Yeah, I mean, Jason's got like 4 or 5 female beginners that are within 2 to 7 or 8 months worth of knowing golf, and they enjoy the game. They play together, which is extremely important.
Yeah, I introduced them, got them together a little bit.
Yep. And the first thing I said to you after that beginner lesson was, she has a bubbly, positive attitude about golf. I haven't seen that in 15 years.
Yeah. Well, yeah, give her a couple of years and she'll be self-deprecating like the rest of us. But also we talked about tempering expectation, right? It's like she thought she should be here, I'm making a high ceiling within 4 or 5 lessons. And like, we're excited to get the ball out of the building and forward.
Yeah.
Right? In the air and out of the building. Right? It's like, and she's learned a tremendous amount and she's playing golf.
Yeah, she's
That's
out
her
there
job.
playing. She wants to 9 and dine. That's her goal.
There you go.
2024.
Yeah. So she gets so excited when she hits a good shot, and like, but then she hits a bad one, and then she falls out, and freaks out. And I'm like, just relax. It's okay. It's like part of it. She's like, oh yeah, this is so. You got to have that bedside manner. Which I think I'm pretty good at to kind of temper those expectations a little bit and bring them along. But it's fun. Like I enjoy teaching newer players. It's really, like you said, it's exciting. It's kind of a breath of fresh air because they don't know what they're about to embark on, right?
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about beginner golfers. I'll lead this in with a stat I saw the other day. Beginner golfers represent the largest growth opportunity in golf, period.
Probably since COVID too, right? I mean, there's a lot of new players that came out of the woodwork.
I've got something that's going to come on Instagram here on this topic really soon, but the data shows that beginner and junior golfers are the largest business opportunity for golf coaches over the next 5 to 10 years. So the beginner lesson was like the most fun we had today. Let's just be honest.
Cool.
Like all the other ones, like they were in there grinding.
Yeah, you left me a couple of times.
It was cold. I needed to get outside in the sun.
Okay.
And I didn't want to be on my phone inside the
cool
dojo.
Shit.
I was trying to be respectful of the dojo.
I understand.
But yeah, the beginner lesson was fun. Like she genuinely enjoyed it. And like it was not a show. It was palpable, obvious enjoyment. What have you learned by coaching beginners that you think benefits your entire portfolio of players?
Going back to when I first started with Dana, like we all come out and we're like, oh, we're going to teach tour players and we just want to teach better players. And she told me the most valuable lesson. She's like, learn to teach beginners because they'll teach you and make you a better teacher quicker because they take everything literal, right? Me getting her to like spread her feet apart was like a dissertation, right? Because I had to like be very succinct with my language to tell her like where the ball position needed to be with the driver. This is the first time, like this is our 4th or 5th lesson, but it's the first time we actually tried the driver. So I was getting her ball position.
She was excited to hit
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's like getting more, I guess, don't be lazy in language, as Jim Rohn always says, but it's being more precise with what you say and talking slower and making sure that you make eye contact and they understand, and then make sure they understand that they can ask questions, right? It's like a lot of times we teach and we're like, oh, that was the greatest lesson ever. And like the student's blacking out, right? And they don't even know because they're not really paying attention because they just checked out, used too many big words. So beginners won't let you get away with that. That's what the thing is. Like, I've got enough like really good players and enough beginners to kind of keep me interested and take me back to my roots of like what made me a better teacher. But as far as like opportunity, like if you're an assistant or young teaching pro at the club, I mean, like give beginner lessons, like do some clinics, just throw it out there. My ladies clinics every week are packed. They're not all beginners, but I mean, they're all different levels. Golly, that's the heart and soul of most country clubs is the ladies. Whether people know it or not, they run it.
I would say most people probably don't know that.
You're right.
Why is that?
It's a marriage, right? I mean, it's like, why are our wives just dominate us, right? So, because we want to make them happy, right? It's like, one, they're the most social. I have the most fun with the ladies at Colleton. It's unbelievable.
Both of your female lessons today were very engaging and fun.
I just like, they're so supportive and they're just so much fun and they just like get
positive.
It. Yeah, they're so positive and they just get it. So we have so much fun every week in the ladies' clinics, and then tell them, like we talked about earlier, like I do 1 on 8, which is a lot. But it's a good way to like, I call it super fast practice, right? It's like all of them come and do like little short packages where they do 30 minutes a week or every couple of weeks, or we actually get into it. I mean, that's opportunity. You're exactly right.
Yeah, and you just touched on something that's very interesting, which I think is not talked about very often, is the 30-minute lesson.
Yeah. I mean, you were surprised at how many 30-minute lessons I gave today.
Very surprised.
Right? And it's not ideal. And most people say, well, that's not enough time. I disagree. Like, you just have to work fast. Like, you got to compress your program. I still have the exact same structure. I still do analysis. I do diagnosis. I do a fix or an improvement. And then we do a recap. It just has to happen quicker. Like, you got to be fast. But it actually makes your eye better. And it makes your brain work faster and say, okay, what's the one thing? It depends on if it's a regular student or if it's a new student. You hate to have a 30-minute new student, ideally, okay? Because you don't get enough time to get to know them, do a proper interview and analysis. But if you do, better get to it and figure out that one thing that's going to help them or improve their ball striking or whatever they want to learn and get them to come back. That's it. But with my club, I got a primarily an older demographic. They can't last an hour a lot of times. 30 minutes is perfect. So, you know, it's just, again, being able to be versatile. I mean, you got to be able to adapt and you got to be versatile as a coach.
So you specifically said there at the end, at your club, does a 30-minute lesson work in a non-club environment?
What, just like a range or whatever? Yeah, sure. I mean, the golf lesson's a golf lesson. And as long as they show up on time, you can't show up late for a 30-minute lesson.
Okay. And this is
I hate when, like, I get months of the members are like,
your people were on time.
Yeah, they were today. But a lot of 30-minute lesson, they show up 5 minutes late. That's a short golf lesson. I mean, it's like you're getting, you know, then they want to work on 3 things. And like, no, that's not going to happen. And then you got to like just structure the deal of like, what are you going to do? But you got to do the best you can. But heck yeah. Dana taught me this a long time ago. It's like that sharpens your eye. You got to think quick. And we got video. Shoot. I mean, it's like, it's not that hard. You get to see whatever, you watch the ball flight and like get to it. You just don't have to ask as many questions. And again, it's like depending on that commitment level of the player and the goals, I mean, you can still give an effective golf. You saw, I got a lot done in 30 minutes, right?
Talk about like outcomes and value. There was plenty of it.
Yeah.
There's not a lack of it.
Yeah.
I have 2 follow-up questions to this. First one is, what type of expectations and accountability do you hold on your players if it's a 30-minute lesson? Like, is it different between a 30 and a 60? Some of your players are also warming up on the range before.
Yeah, they'll warm up before they come in. It's definitely different. But I mean, it's just a chunk of time, right? It's like, I think more long-term, and that's why I like to get people on programs. I like, you know, do 3-month unlimited programs or get people to think more. I want to get you to hit it better now, but like I want you to play better in 6 months. You got to give them that mentality. It's all based on, it's not as much the time, although the 30-minute lesson versus 60-minute lesson, I'm going to give them less than the 30-minute lesson. It's just clear. But it's also based on the player's answers to what they're committed to do, what their goals are, how much they're willing to work, right? It's like where they're at in their career, right? So it's interesting. I had a guy the other day show up, and it was a member's kid, and he scheduled a 30-minute lesson. I had no idea who he was, and he was a mini tour player. Okay. And I was just like, holy cow. Like, cause I just started asking like, hey, you know, I could tell he was a good player. I'm just like, He's like, yeah, I'm playing the mini tour down in Florida or whatever. And I'm like, oh shit. Like I would have had a wholly different deal if I'd have known that. And usually most people spend minimum like a new tour player is like 2 hours, right? Like a lot. But he's like, nah, it's like, and I'm totally cool. It's like, you need to interview me as well as I interview you, right? And we got on great. And I actually gave him a nice golf lesson, and we're going to start working together this next season. But it was just kind of threw me back. I was like, 30 minutes that's not a lot for like, you're playing for a living. I don't take that for granted. So it's cool that we're going to start working together. But it went well, but it was just like, that was not a lot of time.
I think those forced experiences, this one was by accident. You learn a lot. What else did you learn about yourself, about your process in like an experience like that?
Well, it's about communication. Like I learned how to like explain what I would normally do, because people are shocked, even members, because like I try to get them to understand like what I do best, right? It's like, I know I'm a well-rounded coach, but I'm kind of got a specification on putting a little bit, right? So I call myself a part-time putting coach, which I'm not, because I have players that just come to me for putting, and they're shocked when I tell them, like they'll spend an hour with me and they say 10 minutes left in the lesson, can you look at my putting? And I'll tell them like, yeah, but to do a proper putting lesson, like a first-time student usually spends 2 or 3 hours. And they're like, what? Like, what do you do in 2 or 3 hours? I'm like, well, a lot. There's a lot of stuff that I go through, and that's not hard for me. Now, that's a different level of player, but I want them to understand that I can't give them the proper golf lesson in 10 minutes. Like, I can give them a tip, which I'm not a tip guy. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, yeah, the putter's moving outside in or whatever. Like, to really do my job, I need at least an hour for a member putting lesson. So I'm starting to train them to understand that, right? And a lot of them do. Like, yeah, he's a putting guy. Like, he teaches some people in the LPGA and some PGA players, whatever. We got to have time to do our job a lot of times, right? Full swing tends to be a little quicker, but again, it's like you get a temper. You have to do a good job of painting the picture of the future, okay? So it's like, all right, here's what we're going to do today, but here's the progression that I want to take you in, but you're not ready for this part 2, 3, and 4. Just so they know that you know the direction you would go. And I think that holds a lot of weight.
That's very powerful. I mean, that's a part of purpose. Giving someone an idea of where they're headed is a directional guidepost to the purpose of what you're talking to them about.
Yeah, and then understanding that we got to get this first. This is what we're going to do today. But it leads to our ability to do part 2, 3, and 4 to give them a little bit of hope and the direction that, like, you're not just thinking like, I'm not a quick fix guy. And you have to be a quick fix guy with a lot of players. With club players, you better be good at that. But what I really like doing is building.
So why club players over being at a range that you're renting space as a coach? Why do you have to be a quick fix with club players?
I'm not just saying club players, just amateur golfers.
Okay.
Right. It's more, again, it's like, what are they doing? They're playing 8 days a week. They're not practicing. They want a quick fix to play better. It's Thursday and they want to play better on Saturday. They're not going to take 3 days off of their normal game. Like, my guys play every day at the club, most of them. The serious guys that want to get better, and then not that they're not going to get better, they'll get a little bit better, but the guys that are serious, that's why the long-term stuff works really great, is because they're going to have to take a few days off, do some reps, do some drills, do some performance training, and then we go spend time on the golf course and we test it out, right? That's the proper way to get better long-term. But a guy that's like, I'm playing 7 days a week, I'm going to go take a lesson the afternoon after I played early that day.
Like your first lesson today, 12:30 tee time.
There you go. He's the guy. Yeah. Is he going to hit a ton of balls? No. No, he understands a little bit about the changes we made. He's going to get a little bit better. He's going to have more fun. But again, that goes back to like that interview process, the initial analysis of where are we going, right? That has to be present. And then you got to be, as a coach, like, you got to put the plan to match that. If not, it's our fault if we exceed their expectations or give them false hope. That makes us look bad. Plus, it's just not fair to the student.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is a good discussion about 30-minute lessons. The thing that I think is also important that we can't gloss over is your approach. You touched on this briefly. I think it's important to bring up because it's something I'm passionate about from what we do with Struzzi. So I do not think of myself as a golf coach. I've made that clear when we first started. I make that clear everywhere I go. But what I am highly passionate about is the business side of monetizing and taking credit for value. So you touched on this briefly, and I think it's important that we talk about this. Your 30-minute lesson in comparison to your 60-minute lesson is what?
So my hourly lesson, which is still way too low for my members, is $140. My half-hour lesson is $85.
Which is?
$170 an hour.
Thank you.
Yeah. I learned that years ago in an effort to help golfers see the value of spending an hour. So, I mean, why do we do programs? Because we want to get people to invest more time with us. That's it.
And you have your new player. She's 2 months in. She's in a
5-hour program. I let her do 10 half hours, which is to her favor. But again, it's fine. It's still 5 hours regardless, right? I'm not losing any money. But the people that come and get a ton of 30-minute lessons over time, that adds up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something to be said about micro coaching.
Yeah.
We talked about this briefly. Jason Bell has talked about this. It's available on a couple podcasts. He's put this out there publicly that like his goal of a club setting with a head pro is that he should be able to see his players a handful of times each week and give them micro doses of coaching. Now, that's not a reality for a lot of coaches out there.
Yeah.
But your version of it
it's kind of the same.
Is a 30-minute with your people.
Yeah. I have a lot of recurring students that take 30 minutes every week. Again, it's just getting them to come more frequently is better than not. And it's better than somebody booking 2 hours every 6 months.
It's been clear, I think, at this point, and if it's not, then hopefully this is helpful, is like cramming for a test has always been the greatest way to forget the shit you just crammed for 2 days later. So like cramming on a golf lesson, AKA 2 lessons every 7 months, is not a way to learn the game of golf.
No. My preference is that I do a 3-month unlimited, which again, I kind of limit that to a couple, 3 to 5 per quarter. So it doesn't jam up my book too much, but allows me to spend a lot more time on the course with my players. It's awesome. I've had beginner golfers do it. I had one beginner golfer last year. We had a ball to absolutely like take her from zero to actually getting her to play golf and spend time on the golf course with her. It's one of my other beginning ladies. It was so much fun. To near scratch handicaps, right? Where I had to spend very little mechanical time with them and a lot of course management and playing games and challenge points and stuff like that. So it's just like, it's such a great way. If you can do it, I've been able to work it to where I've got enough time where I can get on the course. I love playing lessons. I mean, it's just got to be a part of your arsenal. And it's not for everybody because a lot of times the courses are so busy you can't get out there. But we have a par 3 course too that is helpful. We have 6 holes where I can get out there and do course management. And especially for newer golfers, it's so critical to just teach them the parts of the game. What's golf all about? And that's where the ladies that I've gotten together, they get out there and play the par 3 course, which is fantastic. And that warms my heart even more than like teaching better players a lot of times.
Well, that may be a great answer to my question the other time about what you didn't expect about the impact you've had on your players.
Yeah, that's fun.
So here's an interesting thing too. So I'll close out the business topic of like what you're charging. I've talked about this on Instagram a handful of times on Astruzi. It's more important how you provide a service than what you provide as your service. AKA, it's more important how you deliver your package, how you deliver your value than what you're charging. You've highlighted that in a couple ways. Like, yes, your 30-minute is proportionally a little bit more than your 60-minute. That's a version of how is more important than what. You've talked about packages. That's how is more important than what. Unlimited is how important than what. And at the end of the day, what I think is important to also call out here is the way you provide your value, you've internalized and like you have a system to it.
Yeah.
It's repeatable.
I have a framework that I work around, but I mean, there's so many moving parts in that framework. You see on the posters on the wall with the mastermind skills and whatnot, but it's...
is it 4 or 5? I can't remember.
5.
5?
Yeah.
What are the 5?
Well, we got low point control, face control, body pivot, and that could be, again, different kinds of body pivot. Sweet spot path control, which is like swing plane, or I call it just controlling the sweet spot of the club. And then D-plane knowledge, which is understanding ball flight.
And are these sequential?
Not necessarily. They can be interchangeable, but all very, very important. When I give a first lesson, I don't think you saw a first lesson today. One of the first things that I do is basically talk about what creates ball flight. And I talk about the tool, right? And I show them some things about how the club is supposed to move based on the way it's built and the 3 sort of TrackMan numbers that are important as far as like creating ball flight. Whether they get it right away, it's not important. As long as they have an idea. And then when we start devising the plan for improvement, then it's like, okay, here's the metric that's important. Whether it's club path, whether it's face, angle of attack, whatever, low point. It's usually one of those. And you can see how I actually like change my screen based on what I want them to see. Somebody's obsessed with distance, I'll take the carry and total off. Because I don't want them like, oh, geez, I hit that really good. God, I can't believe it went 130. Like, stop worrying about that. Control the ball. Like, let's get ball control. How about that? Let's get some repeatable, like predictable ball flight and worry about distance later. But yeah, so that's kind of the fun things. And there's, massive little tentacles that go along with those. Me and my staff that I had at Carmel, we went and did like a deep dive into basically every position in the golf swing and then whether it had a rightward or a leftward path influence. Like that was one of our exercises that we did. So that's kind of the way I think of the golf swing. It's like everything is like a balance sheet. Like you take one away and you give one this side. You're trying to figure out the direction you want to go with whatever. And that goes with everything in the golf swing, whether it's pivot, wrist angles, club shaft position, club face, whatever, sweet spot. You ever watch The Good Doctor? You ever watch that show on TV? No. Really good show.
So if we go back to a point you made about some of your players getting on course with you, I have heard, you talked about this in an episode with Chris Trevino, which is the one I specifically remember. I'm sure it's come up plenty of other times. Talk about an on-course game called
2 drives and 5.
2 drives and 5.
Yeah.
So 2 drives and 5 is a on-course game. Definitely explain that here in a second. What are your other favorite on-course games?
You can design it around the player a little bit if you want to like put penalties on where you don't want that player to miss, whether it's like right rough, left rough, and so on. But when I train my guys, like the 2 or 3, 4 really good juniors that I work with on a weekly basis, we do what we call cash and consequences. Stole that from Cameron McCormick. And we bet money and we play worst ball scramble a lot of the times. And I'll make a hybrid version of that and I'll explain that. So worst ball scramble, everybody knows you hit 2 balls and you take the worst shot and you play out, which is the absolute hardest game in golf. If they make a bogey, they owe me money. If they make a par, they win a little bit of money. If they make a birdie, they make a lot of money. And we kind of keep tally throughout. And then we pay off. Like they'll pay me or I'll pay them. But I'll do some hybrids where I'll say, depending on what I'm working on with the player, if like say they're driving it poorly and we're putting a stress on driving, I'll say worst ball off the tee, best ball into the green, or we can reverse it. If we're working more on approach shots, I'll say best ball off the tee, if they're a pretty good driver, and then worst ball into the green. You can basically be creative with all that. As far as like 2 drives and 5, you may go through that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 2 drives and 5. I learned this a long time ago. I think it was Mo Pickens down in Sea Island that kind of originated it. And then a lot of my friends have talked about it. But really good tournament prep game that you can use on par 4s and par 5s. But basically you hit 2 tee balls off the tee. If you hit both of them in the fairway, you lie 0. If you hit it in the rough, you add 1. If you can make it, if you hit it in the trees, you add 2. Then you go to a wedge distance, depending on what you're working on. Again, you can tailor this to the handicap of the player. I'll tend to go somewhere between 80 and 120 yards. And you play that ball as a par 3. So you hit that shot on the green, you 2-putt, make a 3, and then you throw a ball down around the green for the short game shot, and they have to get that up and down. So if they hit the fairway twice, hit the ball on the green with their wedge and 2-putt, and then they get up and down, they make a 5, which is a par. It's not as easy as it sounds. So again, we'll bet money on that as well. So it's kind of the same deal. But yeah, just how do you put pressure on your players? It's tough. Aside from like yelling in their backswing. Christopher Smith, it's what can we do to create challenge, right? So we talked a little bit about at dinners, creating spacing, which I try to do a lot in my private lessons. Even in the building, you can create spacing, whether it's chatting somebody up, making them forget about what they were working on. I'll literally had my beginner walk around the room.
I saw that today.
Yeah, walk around the room after she had a couple bad shots, reset, and get back in. That's spacing, and then variability, which is changing targets. And then your challenge is how do you make it tougher? And I do a lot of skills challenges with TrackMan, and the new app is phenomenal. If you guys haven't used the new app, you're missing out with the ladder drill and trying to think of the other one's called the systematic warm-up, I believe is what it's called.
Well, I think the ladder drill is important to talk about because what I took away from it, if you're a golf coach who can't get a player on the course, there's plenty of them out there for whatever reason it may be.
Yeah.
The thing that they may be thinking about right now is, well, how do I play an on-course game? Like, how do I challenge a player on the range? Mm-hmm. What I learned about the ladder drill was that seems like a pretty good option.
It's a really good option. Yeah, if you got TrackMan, you got the simulator. So that's good too, because it has on-course practice. You can go literally drop a ball at any place on the course and have them hit shots. Again, you can play the same games in that situation. So interesting to watch players like change. And I'll literally point out, I'm like, you sit there and striped it for 20 minutes. And I literally turned the sim on with like a picture of a green and you missed the green. Like nothing changed. You didn't even change position.
Still in the shed.
Still in the shed. Yeah, in the shed. Still in the dojo. And then like, so it's just complete mindset, right? So like, the more you can challenge your players, and that's the thing, and that's a whole nother discussion of like failure and then like helping players understand that even when they don't hit the ball great in a golf lesson, it's still an opportunity to learn. Like that's the hard sell. It's a really hard sell. Being a people pleaser, it's like, I want you to feel good, but understanding that feeling good and sucking is not going to make you better. Making you uncomfortable, helping you to feel different and weird. What did I tell the guy? The guy was like, oh, that feels so weird. I'm like, oh, weird is good. Mm-hmm. That is always good. Mm-hmm. Weird is change. Weird is improvement.
Weird means you're in an uncomfortable space.
Right. And you're doing something different, which should be exciting. Mm-hmm. Like that's the thing that a lot of players don't understand. That should be an exciting thing. It's like, wow, I'm doing something different. Why would you want to go and get a golf lesson and feel the same? Like, what are you doing? What are you paying for? That should not be an option. We're not in the like mental health business as far as like, woo,
this is the opposite.
Kumbaya. Yeah. No, we're trying to make you feel uncomfortable because we're trying to make you better.
Yeah.
Like moving different is hard. Mm-hmm. Like changing your patterns is hard. Everything is difficult. That's a hard sell though. Again, it's just like you got to kind of walk the tightrope depending on the player, the personality, because we want them to come back so we can help them. We don't want to like make them feel completely bury them the first time and like so they don't feel good about it. But it's just like, golly, that's another skill in itself as far as that's a coaching piece, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what I found interesting out of today and like the conversations we've had since watching you give live lessons is the variability in the definition of value. So there are a lot of coaches that do not have the access to the facilities and conditions that you have or other coaches have at a club, where the membership is constantly there. Your driving range may be considered a top whatever in the country, whatever the category may be. There are a lot of coaches who don't coach in those conditions. And it's easy for those coaches to believe that the value they provide is less because of their conditions. But what we've covered today is there's a million ways to provide value.
100%.
And like, if you have a TrackMan or any other simulated shot tracking system, or you don't even need a
don't have to have it.
You could use yardage markers of pins in the range. Like there are thousands of ways to add value and gamify the process of learning and coaching that adds value to the person that's directly in front of you on a daily basis.
100%. Yeah. Thinking about my days at Dana Rader was so interesting because how we've evolved with technology. We were deemed to be like very technologically advanced. All we had was a building, which was nice. We had an indoor studio with a net and we had V1 video. That's it. This is before TrackMan, before FlightScope, before GC Quad. That's all we had. Okay. So what I found was very important was presentation. And I still find this to the day. Like when I set up a ladies clinic, I don't just like throw balls out there. I set my sticks up. I set my bag out there. I got all my training aids. Like my shit's in order. You know what I'm saying? Like it looks like we're ready to get after it. Like we're ready to learn. You wouldn't know the group coming out there. And I learned that back in the day. And I remember Dana's like, you're the model. Like I always have my bag out there with my training aids, like a chair, whatever, a cooler for drinks or whatever you're doing if I'm out there all day. But it's like presentation is important. If I do a putting clinic, I'm going to have my training aids out there. My balls are stacked nicely. It's like, that's important. You can do that anywhere. You don't have to have outstanding facilities. You got a plot of grass. there's nothing that stops you from like having your stuff looking professional, right? Everybody can get and we all have an iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
That's your camera. That's all you got.
Tripods are super
Absolutely.
inexpensive.
You got a little tripod. Get a couple of iPod touches, $100, used for my cameras now. It's like, it's not that expensive. So it's like, yeah, it's a good point. It's like, you don't have to, you got to use what you got. I think presentation is very, very important. First impression is for a student, ultra important.
Mm-hmm. It's cheesy to say, but you only get one first impression. And at the end of the day, so we're talking about controllables. That's where we started to bring this kind of a little bit full circle.
Yep.
You have ultimate control over the first impression someone has when they show up. There's no doubt about that. That's really important. That's great. All right. So here's another interesting thing. So we're going a little bit off the reservation here, not talking about golf. I was fortunate enough during a summer internship when I was at University of Delaware. I was in a sport marketing major. I did a handful of sport-related internships, and one of them at Comcast Spectacor in Philadelphia was a rotational style program. And one of my rotations, I got to shadow and work a WWE event.
Ooh.
Which was very interesting. And at the time, I had not been exposed to WWE at all. And something I think I've realized recently, and this came up actually on the Huberman podcast recently with Rick Rubin, pro wrestling and entertainment style, in air quotes, events have grown in popularity because people know they're fake and are okay with it.
Okay. I just saw Iron Claw, by the way.
Okay.
2 nights ago.
How was
that?
that?
Know what that is? It was great. I didn't know the story.
I don't know it either.
Yeah. You have to go see. It's about the Von Erichs, which was a famous wrestling family.
That sounds very intriguing.
Yeah.
Now that I know a little bit more about WWE.
It just came out. Yeah. I just went and saw it in the movie theater, like live.
Those exist?
They do.
Did you get popcorn?
I did.
Did you get
always?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah,
you have to. So my question on the WWE topic is: people know it's fake, people know it's a show, but why do you think it's growing in popularity now over the last 3 to 5 years more than it ever has?
So wrestling is growing in more popularity?
It is, yes.
Wow,
it's proven fact.
I mean, and back then they had to know it was fake, right? I mean, they even highlighted the fact that it was scripted. The guys are still phenomenal athletes, right? I think people want to root for somebody, right? They want to be on a team. They want to be on Tommy Rich, They want to be on. It was cool. It kind of brought. I didn't watch wrestling. My wife was actually, her and her dad watched wrestling when she was a kid, right in this era, which was really cool. Yeah, I just think one, it's just like you said, it's production, and I think people realize that, oh my gosh, that's crazy, but they want to be a part of a community and a team of whatever, the bad guys and the good guys. That's the only thing I can kind of think that would make people go. My wife would probably be a better subject for that. It's like, why did you knew us? She's like, it's not fake, it's fake. But these guys, oh my gosh. I think Zac Efron was the main guy, and he was they were just ripped. Jeremy Allen White, they got super big for this movie. They were athletes to be able to do what they did and not absolutely kill each other.
It's coordinated madness.
It is. It really is. I mean, it's impressive.
Yeah.
Being not a wrestling fan, I'm not sure I can answer that.
This is interesting because I'm not a wrestling fan either. But to your point earlier about you find people fascinating and intriguing, and you just enjoy the process of meeting a lot of other people.
Yeah.
What I think is interesting about wrestling is, this came up on the Huberman podcast. The thought process is, we are in an age where media, in air quotes, has been deemed as something we shouldn't trust, which has given rise to popularity like this podcast, where we're your goals are not to brainwash people. There's no industrial complex, in air quotes, here in this podcast or others. And everyone has a voice, and small media, small voices tend to be trusted more than large because the large is somehow involved with government influence and power. And people know going into WWE that it's not real. And there's a sense of comfort.
They still go.
And they still go.
Yeah.
Because they can trust that it's not real.
Yeah, I guess.
And they're not being fooled. It's a very deep psychological human topic.
I don't know the answer to that one. That I've never really thought of it that way. The fact that they have to know, but
people want authenticity. So when you tell them that something's not real, that's super authentic.
Yeah, I guess so.
it's the opposite effect.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing to think about. It's like, oh, how does that apply to like golf coaching business? I don't have the answer to that one.
No,
But like,
I don't think there's no. Hopefully not. Hopefully not. Yeah.
we don't need more of that, right?
No, we're good.
All right, let's think here. So your LinkedIn is definitely out of date.
Oh, for sure. I don't ever use LinkedIn.
Oh, but your
Shit.
LinkedIn profile says that you were working on a book.
I wrote 3/4 of a book years ago.
About?
Just golf instruction, just like bullshit.
So what happened?
It's a great question. I think not only like audiobooks are like the thing, but I've read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books. But at the time, I was evolving like so fast, like the information was coming at me so fast. Every time I would sit down to write and I would go back and read what I had written, I wanted to change it.
Because
I was evolving. Like it was always
that
it was
fast.
evolution. Yeah, it was just like
how can teaching principles change that quickly?
They do. And it depends on the place you're at the time. And I was at a very vulnerable place of where like this was in my like go-getting mode, right? I mean, this was golly. So I couldn't put it out. It would have been fine. And I actually I contacted Matt Rudy. He was going to like help me ghostwrite it. And I kept going back and forth from different ideas. I'm like, I don't know. It was just, and golf books were kind of a little bit out of fad at the time. You know, they were kind of going like before, like that's all we had. Before the internet, it was like, I was reading everybody's book to figure out what they were teaching.
They're in the dojo, can confirm.
Yeah, you see them. Most of them are in there. So it's just like, I don't know, it just never felt right. Like the book I want to write is probably after my son's career kind of pans out of being like the dad/coach, because I've had tons of questions on that. You know, again, I've made a lot of mistakes and I've done a lot of things right, but that would be probably a more interesting, more helpful book. Again, it's just like I would want to put something out to the audience that is helpful. Mm-hmm. And what I felt like I was putting out was very basic and most people have done it. Like, I guess that's probably was my mindset. I'm like, this is shit. So I don't like it. Like, I wouldn't read this. And again, it's like, you know, I started a podcast because I wanted to talk about stuff that I was interested in and hopefully somebody else would be. But when books come to pass, it's kind of, you need a bigger audience, I think. Now books are kind of on the wayside. So yeah, that was it. I mean, it's not more than that.
So I think this is important.
Still there. I got it. I was going
to say, no, it hasn't gone anywhere.
No, it's still there.
I think this is important to talk about because what I've learned about the process of writing is that typically the deepest and most well-rounded, well thought out thinkers and believers are writers.
Yeah.
And you touched on this about your goals. The physical act of writing something down forces the brain and the physical connection to communicate in a way that enforces a belief and a thought process in far deeper ways than thinking or speaking.
Yeah, I think when I was doing the blog, that basically, I mean, I should go back and just make that a book. Like I had so many great blog posts. Like I would literally be teaching all day and be like, oh, wow, this would be a good idea. And I couldn't wait to get home to like write about it. You know, it's like, that's when I was super excited about that. And, you know, whether it was like a video that I shot that day or that was the go-getting time of my life, which again, I want to recapture some of that. I don't know, definitely the video thing. I mean, now like obviously people are getting in front of the camera a lot more. Guys that top teachers that I never thought would do it are doing it more. So I've got a lot to say. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, the blog was cool. And I became my website and it kind of got destroyed. And there's a lot of shit that happened in that. But I mean, domains and whatnot. But yeah, there was a lot of growth there when I would write. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
You just brought up an interesting topic. I personally know I learn by my own mistakes. And I think most humans would prefer to learn from other people's trials and tribulations. Mm-hmm. You just referenced that the blog turned into something you didn't enjoy. I'm not calling it a mistake.
I didn't say it didn't enjoy. I loved it.
So what happened to the blog? Like why did it stop?
I tried to turn that into my website and it didn't work so well.
What do you mean?
Well, I lost my domain name because I was faulty in my payment and it turned into a Russian porn site.
Stop it.
So I lost my domain name.
No.
Yeah, but the information's still there.
What's the domain name?
It was golfgurutv.com. Like you could purchase it now for like $100,000 or some shit. But yeah, so I lost it.
So some Russian porn site bought that domain name.
Yeah, because I let it slip.
They're squatting on it.
Yeah, they probably sold it by now, but they had let it slip. And then so that kind of backfired into, I got a website, and then a lot of the stuff didn't transfer. It was, I don't know. Anyways.
What kind of porn is on Golf Guru TV?
I don't know. I haven't been on there. I don't know. Now it's golfgurutv.net, which is like my new porn site. My new
golf porn.
My new website that's no longer now. So yeah, I need to do a better job of that part of it. I've left a lot of stuff on the table. But anyways, yeah. No, I was just saying like that was a big maturation of like my evolution of my teaching, because it was a good way for me to share on that platform. So I'd post on like a lot of my videos on there, and just wrote a ton. And there was a lot of cool articles that I'd write. And then, so that was part of it.
Here's an interesting segue into AI. So part of my day job, I don't know if I should keep calling it that, to be totally honest with you. Part of what I do daily.
Your side hustle's closely your day job now, right?
Yes.
Like, that's the goal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Alex Hormozy, he says that the time you know that your side hustle becomes your full hustle is when it repeats revenue 3 months in a row that matches your current full hustle.
Yeah.
We're not there yet.
Yeah.
But I can see there's a path to that.
Cool.
The beauty of it is it's like I'm trying to find balance, which is this fuzzy thing that doesn't exist, that gives me as much leeway and runway as I possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
To go back to your ultramarathon example, I look at this as an ultramarathon.
Perfect. Yeah.
I just need to survive as long as humanly possible.
Yeah. Just stay upright.
Yep.
Make sure you get fed. Make sure you drink enough water, and then keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's not about speed.
Nope.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That's a great analogy.
It's just like most things fail because someone decided to quit.
There you go.
All
keep
it comes down
getting up.
Yeah.
Keep moving forward.
Exactly. I love it. Going back to your website and blog post content. So there are AI services today that allow you to take your publicly referenceable content and create a persona of you that is an AI version of you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the AI version of Jason Sutton would be like?
Oh, gosh. I would hope he would be a very smart, empathetic, like good-looking dude.
With a nice full head of hair.
With a great head of hair and decent teeth. And hopefully, he'd be a little fitter than I look right now. Yeah, it's like Kevin wrote. Did you get to the part where Kevin and Tim were talking about that? Where his idea was phenomenal. We can get into it. I'm using this AI app called Assist. Have you heard of that yet?
Not yet, no.
Yeah, but they force you to pay a little bit. It's not much, like $7 for each category. Like I can basically create an AI assistant for my branding or my wine sommelier. Like you answer all these questions of like what you're interested in, right? But I just get a kick out of like asking them questions, right? So if you give them enough information, like they can write an IG post for you. They can do like a lot. Like AI can do a lot.
I love how you called the bot AI. You're very personal about it.
I don't know. Yeah, I need to name her. Sure, it's
definitely a female.
I'll call her Kindle. How about that? For those that do Peloton will know what I'm talking about. So that's the one I'm kind of messing with. I haven't done Chat GPT. Yeah. I mean, I know that's free, but this one seems to be kind of where I'm looking. So yeah, it would be cool. Like I would like to have it. I've already asked him, like, can you go take one of my podcasts and like pull like a couple of segments out and like create a post for me? Like it can't do that yet.
Not there.
Not yet. Yeah. But I think there's an avenue to that to where
could you give it a text?
I have to give it like enough information, but it can't do audio yet. So that's disappointing.
It would need an audio to text translation is essentially what it's
correct. Yeah. So I got to figure out how that works, but I'm definitely into it. I mean, I think it's going to save us time. I think it's really interesting.
I mean, the topic of AI, in my opinion, goes back to my deep-seated apprehensiveness to the larger industrial states that we all live with every day. So, like, everyone's afraid of AI because of Terminator and other movies and, like, the government telling you that it's going to take your job. At the end of the day, we will be at a point where AI is intelligent enough to help us in ways that we find massively valuable. But at the point when we get to that point, like the world would be very different.
Oh, sure.
We're trying to place that mental picture on current day. That's scary.
Yeah, it's not going to replace human interaction. Like it's not, like people have to get real. It's just basically a time saver. Like kids are using it in college right now to write papers.
Sure.
Like my kid's like, he's like, I'll just use the chat GTP. I'm like, what? Like, yeah, I just give him a couple things and then like it writes a paper for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you kidding me? Like that's
like, okay,
it's not going to replace anybody.
Right. And if it does anything as valuable as what it may do, let's say like the one thing it does do that's inherently very valuable is it helps people revert focus and time, energy, and effort and prioritize individual relationships more than we do now. That's huge because we're coming out of COVID where people, the very large percentage of population, were devoid of human interaction and relationships for a very long period of time, which we will not know the negative impact for a very long period of time, unfortunately. But it happened to a lot of people, and people are still dealing with it today. If it helps us have physical and mental energy to focus on more human-to-human interactions, what could be more net positive than that? After all, we just talked about like that human age study that said by 50, people who live healthier and longer have deeper and healthier relationships. Like, there's nothing more important than human connection.
100%.
I hope we get there. And like at the end of the day, it's like it's really easy to fearmonger because we're so early. But it's like nothing is going to happen.
People don't like change.
No.
They don't like change. And I've been, I think, an advocate of change for the most part. So,
I mean, without change, we die.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
Keep moving.
So how do we feel about a couple quick fire questions to end as you usually do with yours?
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Okay.
Let's do it.
What is an unusual habit or absurd thing that you love?
It's definitely the movies. I watch not always good movies. I watch bad movies over and over again.
Define bad.
I don't know. I mean, like it's from the eye of the beholder, right? Like some view, like one of my favorite podcasts I listen to weekly is called The Rewatchables. I don't know if anybody's a movie lover out there. Bill Simmons and used to be at ESPN does a podcast that basically takes movies, old movies that are rewatchable, like movies you'd want to watch over and over, and breaks them down into every segment. That's literally my cerebral getaway. I just find it interesting. Like if anybody asked me the question, like, what would you be doing if you weren't a golf instructor? I'd be doing something in the movie business, whether it be writing scripts or directing, or I'm fascinated with movies. So anyways, it drives my wife crazy. She's like, oh, I've put on Roadhouse or something. And like, oh, I haven't seen that one in 2 weeks. I'm just passionate about that. And as I've talked about in plenty of the podcasts, I use a lot of movie quotes when I teach, like a lot of callbacks, as I say. So it's like either that or it's like I'm obsessed with comedy too, like how comedians construct bits and how they construct sets. Storytelling and just how the way they go about doing a show. Was very fascinating to me.
Kevin Hart is a mastermind at it.
There's so many, right? It's like we could go on and on, but I'm just saying that's stuff that like I love to watch. Like I can sit and watch good comedy, or I can sit in old movies that, whatever. And we'll have to plug my new sort of spinoff before we wrap up too with my boy.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'll let's end with that.
Yeah, we'll end with that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What's your biggest frustration with golfers today?
Biggest frustration with golfers is golfers that expect to be better but don't want to put in the work and don't understand the work that it requires to get better, and doesn't understand the work required has to be suited for their needs.
What do you mean suited for their needs?
A player that watches YouTube videos and like works on the wrong stuff. It's not suited for their needs. Looks great. Yeah, I'd love to do that, but it's not really what they need to do to get better.
They're looking for the quickie lube fix.
Exactly.
Yeah. Second part of that question, what is your biggest frustration with other golf coaches today?
I'd say kind of the same thing, but golf coaches that want to get to a certain level but aren't willing to work hard to get there. Like want the quick fix of getting the information and thinking that they know it, right? So there's one thing about getting information and then understanding the information. And then there's a third part about actually imparting that into a golf lesson. So I think a lot of the younger coaches think that just because they've done so many certifications, they've spent time with other coaches, blah, blah, blah. It's great. You should do that. Bypass the experience piece of time spent on the range, failing, doing the wrong things, and then figuring out how to get better and expecting a different result of like actually being a better coach. That's pretty blunt, especially from this podcast, but that's the real.
And the truth is, like, that comes down to the Theodore Roosevelt quote about like the man in the arena. There is absolutely no substitution for being the fucker in the arena, fighting the fight daily, getting up after being knocked down. Like, there's just no substitution for doing it, doing the damn thing, doing hard stuff, like you said.
Do hard stuff. Go push yourself. Do something that makes you uncomfortable, and you'll get better.
I love it.
Yep.
I think the appropriate place to end here is where you usually end with all of yours. I get to ask it to you now. If you had a billboard and you wanted to send a message to the masses, you kind of do this with the podcast, but let's pretend it was a billboard. What would you put on your billboard?
My normal, I want to come up with a new one, but we're going to bide time. My typical answer, and I always, in like my talks and workshops with this, was the Zig Ziglar quote, which is, if you do enough to help other people, you can have everything you want. If you help everybody else reach their goals, you can have everything you want if you're interested. Gosh, I'm a little blindsided. I'm embarrassed.
It's a hard question,
right?
dude.
I didn't know you were going to do that. Shit. Oh my gosh. So, all right, here's my new one.
Okay.
Don't believe everything you think.
I love it.
Don't believe everything you think.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Your current thoughts and perceptions don't fucking matter.
That's it. That's it.
I love it.
Dude, this was awesome. Thank you so much for doing this, and you're an incredible host.
This was fun.
Yeah.
This was a very enjoyable process for me. I hope so. I hope everyone else enjoyed it. Before we actually leave, though, what do you want to say as that finishes out?
Oh, yeah. So a new, like, not the random show or the obligatory show, as this one we can come up with a name, but we're going to do some spinoffs with me and my buddy Jake Thurm, which is going to be called the Sideways Golf Show. And you can guys figure out Sideways meaning the title of a movie, and also it's going to be some random topics, a lot of golf instruction, a lot of worldly events and so forth, but entertaining nonetheless. So that's coming in early 2024. So I'm excited for that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Great stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you for your partnership and your friendship, and I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where it just feels so organic. Like, it's just fun. This is great stuff. It's fun to support you. It's fun to support what you're doing. Like, every day I get a piece of feedback from the coaches you support, dude. It's great. I'm proud to be here.
Appreciate it, man.
Love you, buddy.
Let's go. I love you too.
Good stuff.
Man.